Hey, Ellie, what's up? minute, so please grab a seat, make yourselves comfortable. Yeah, I know John.
No, I was just thinking they're both residents.
Oh,
So we
residents.
don't have to request
Yes.
absolution.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Town of Hartford Annual Town Meeting and Town School District Meeting for 2024. Thanks to all of you for walking away from your sap buckets to be here today. Quick straw poll. How many people in the room have some involvement with maple sugaring, even if it's a milk jug tacked on a tree? Yeah. Awesome. All right. Yeah, traditionally town meeting was, at the end of the town meeting, you'd go home and put in your taps, hang your buckets for the year. And with the weather being what it is, this could be the year that we go home from town meeting and take out the buckets, since the season is pretty well underway. In any event, my name is Chuck Worcester. I'm your town and school district meeting moderator. I was elected by you last year to run this year's meetings. Today is the third of 4 events in our annual town meeting cycle. We had information night back in January. We had budget and candidates night just this past Monday. This is town meeting, and then town meeting Australian ballot voting is on Tuesday. That's the 4th of 4. So we have some items to take care of today as a group. A couple things as we get started. First of all, there is Wi-Fi in the room, should anybody want it. And it's the HSD guest for Hartford School District guest. So look for that on your phone or device, and I'll tell you what the code is, so if you have a pen handy, you can write it down. It's the number 732552. 732552, and that's the code to get in. Big thanks as we get started to the folks at Junction Arts and Media who are broadcasting our meeting today. We have Mike and B and Chico at the controls, so thanks very much to Junction Arts and Media for doing this. For those of you who are watching from home, in order to participate in today's meeting, you do have to be present here on the floor. So if you're at home wondering if you can have a question or vote, the answer is no. So do come down to the gymnasium here to participate if you'd like to today. I will say, as an aside, at Monday's Budget and Candidates Night, we had roughly 400 people participating, which is a fantastic number. We had about 125 in the room, about 75 on Zoom, and about 200 on YouTube. So we can kind of lose track here in the room of what's actually happening, but a large number of people participated on Monday, which was really exciting to know. Okay. Today's meeting is going to have 4 parts. We're going to have a bond presentation from the school district. Then we're going to have the school district meeting. Then we're going to have a bond presentation from the select board. And then we're going to have the town meeting. So those 4 things are going to happen in sequence. The town and school district meetings will happen under Robert's Rules of Order. So in case you haven't brushed up on Robert's Rules of Order, I have a copy. Fortunately, almost none of it comes up in the context of a meeting like this, which is great. But there are a few things for people to know about Robert's Rules for today. The first is that we have the agenda for today's meeting, and that's what we're going to follow, which is to say, if it's not on the agenda, we're not going to bring it up. So part of Robert's Rules is to protect people who aren't here. Let's say, for example, you were all in favor of Hartford planting trees. You saw on the agenda that tree planting was not on the agenda, so you didn't come to the meeting, only to discover later that the town meeting had decided no more trees in Hartford. You would understandably be upset. So that's the point of the agenda. We follow what's on here, and we don't follow things that aren't on here. So that's an important point. A second part of Robert's Rules for today is that you must be a resident of the town, and in this case the school district, since they're the same, in order to speak and vote today. So that's a critical thing. So when you stand up and come to a microphone to ask a question, I'll ask you where you live. And you can say anything that you want as long as it identifies you as being in the town of Hartford. And when the meeting, or I guess I'll just do this right now, I would ask your permission at today's meeting for employees of the town and the school who may not be residents to have the opportunity to speak, provided they introduce themselves as an employee of the town or school district. So if there's no objection to that, I'll follow that guidance going forward. It just makes it a little bit easier for the meeting to flow if we don't have to deal with that on a case-by-case basis. Okay, when we get into the Robert's Rules part of the meeting, each question is brought before you, the voters, and it's up to you to decide when you want to move on to the next question. So unlike a select board meeting or a school board meeting, when the boards control the action, we collectively control the action here today. So when you decide you've heard enough on a particular question, you can approach the microphone and you can say, what you often will say is, you want to call the question. And so that's a signal to me to say that you're eager to move on to the next thing. So if somebody calls the question, I will ask if there's a second. If there is a second, we'll have a vote to decide whether to vote. So in calling the question, I'll ask if everyone's ready to move on. If 2/3 of us are ready to move on, then in this case, if there's no voting to be done, we'll just move on to the next question. If there is voting to be done, I'll call for the vote. So calling the question is an important thing, and if it feels to me like the meeting is starting to drag, I may ask someone to come forward and call the question so that we can continue moving on. And that lasts right up until the final item on each agenda, which is to do any other necessary and proper non-binding business. And that item will last as long as you want it to last. If someone decides that they've heard enough and they're ready to move on, then you would call to adjourn the meeting. And if that, again, you approach the microphone, you ask to adjourn, I ask if there's a second. If there is a second, we call for a vote. If a majority votes to adjourn, the meeting is over, just like that. So again, sort of the control of the meeting is actually in your hands, and I'll try to direct things along that way, but keep that in mind as we go. The last thing I want to mention today, so there's a bunch of things that are in town meeting this year. Many of them are on the Australian ballot, which is going to be what we vote on Tuesday. For example, the budget items, a lot of the appropriations to different social service agencies are all on Tuesday. So if you want to talk about something that's on that, you're welcome to do that under the other business. That's a great time to do it. Similarly, if you want to talk about the charter proposals, other business is a great time to do that. It's a chance to talk about it. We're not going to vote on it because we're going to be voting on Tuesday, but that's a good time to talk about it. If you want to talk about the budget, a great time to do that is under the first item, which is to receive the reports of the town officers. So you may have seen this when you walked in. This is the report of the town and school district officers. This includes the budgets. So feel free, if you have something you want to say about the budget, to bring it up at that point. Finally, the one thing that we won't talk about today is any of our candidates for local office. This is a specific thing under Vermont state law. that the candidates who get voted on Tuesday don't get discussed at a prior official town meeting like this. So we had budget and candidates night on Monday, which was a great time to do that. Many of the candidates are here. I'm sure the candidates will be outside the polls on Tuesday, so you'll have an opportunity to ask questions of the candidates, but not in the context of today's formal meeting. Okay, I think that handles the housekeeping here to get us started. So I'm going to call to order the town and school district meetings for the town of Hartford for 2024. As per the agenda, the town meeting is immediately recessed so that we can get to the school meeting first. And in this case, if there's no objection, I'm also going to recess the school district meeting so that we can hear from the school board about their bond proposal. So if there's no objection, I'm also going to recess the school district meeting just so we can hear from the school district. Okay, hearing none. So both meetings are formally in recess at the moment. I'm now going to recognize the school district school board for their bond presentation. So Kevin, would you call your board to order and go ahead and get started?
I'd like to call the annual school town meeting school board component to order, March 2nd, 2024.
I assume it's appropriate to approve the agenda, and then we'll...
No, so we're doing the bond. We're doing the bond
I
hearing.
wasn't sure which...
Yep. You guys are meeting as the school board
Right.
to present the bond.
Okay.
Invite Jonathan to the lectern.
Right. Jonathan, would you join us, please?
Morning. I'm Jonathan Garthwaite. I'm the facilities director here. You're here, so you have some familiarity with the bond. I thought I'd talk a little bit about how we got to this point. About 2 years ago, we started a process of really taking a hard look at facilities comprehensively, academic facilities, athletic facilities, extracurricular facilities, with a couple goals in mind. One was just a general assessment to see what we had to do. Another was to look forward as far as possible to what the needs of the district will be. And then the last one, which really is probably the most important, is just to ensure the safety of students, faculty, and staff as they're here. So as we went through that process, the first thing we had to acknowledge is that we have aging infrastructure. Most of our buildings are not new. The newest buildings are 30 plus years old. And with that comes some requirement for upkeep. So we looked at those. Some of them are pretty significant. We made a really long, exhaustive and exhausting list, and then prioritized first by life safety, what has to be done to keep people safe. Fire alarm systems, sprinkler systems, egress, lighting, all that important stuff. From there, we moved into kind of utility infrastructure, heating, ventilation, those things that became so apparently critical during COVID. Take a hard look at those, and then just, heating, ventilation is not just a health issue, it's just the comfort of the environment. And then some of the building infrastructure, roofs, pavement, that sort of thing, windows, doors, etc. What that turned into with this bond request is really a three-part approach that's reflected by the items on that worksheet. The first is planning. We need to plan both what we're going to execute immediately and how that folds into a larger comprehensive program for the district. The community is growing, and that's going to impact enrollment somehow. Not sure anybody knows exactly how, but we need to forecast that and incorporate that into planning to do it right. The other piece is just the nuts and bolts of getting the work done, getting the right resources in place to help us figure out exactly what to do. The design engineers, the consultants who live and breathe this stuff to fill in the gaps in our internal knowledge. And then putting that all together so that it's executed in a way that doesn't leave anything behind, so we're not taking steps back at the end of the day. That's kind of the history of how we got here. So the bond itself is intended to reflect that. As I said, it starts with this planning piece, the consultants coming in to help us to sort out what we need to do next and how we need to do it, to look at the impact of increased enrollment, where that's going to land, the catchment for what students end up where, in what age groups, in what schools, in what classes. Input from faculty and staff about developing programs, because programs develop quickly and change quickly, and we don't want to build something that's not going to be suitable in 5 years or 10 years even. And then just how do we do that in a way that is cost effective and represents good stewardship of the taxpayers' dollars. And we decided the way to do that is to take it on in this big bond as a comprehensive project and just take a big bite and do it all at once. I'll let others speak to the details of the financing arrangement, but the simple reality from my chair is financing this work long-term is less expensive than not doing it. If we don't fix parking lots, they degrade with an expense that is greater than the interest rate on a bond, and we'll just never catch up. So at some point, we have to have a hard reset and address some of these large infrastructure issues. And hopefully, by doing it in this manner, in this comprehensive manner, not just, we'll not only address those infrastructure and facilities problems, but we'll do it in a way that captures the aspirational qualities as well. So when we do renovations, when we do upgrade facilities, we're doing it in a way that allows and facilitates the next advancement in academic and extracurricular programming. So that's kind of very broad brush where we landed with this bond request. If anybody has any specific questions, I or Sarah could answer them. Do we want to come up?
Why don't we hold on here? Let's let them make the presentation. Yeah,
Okay.
and then I'll
you wanna
ask
go
for
through the
questions.
PowerPoint?
Yeah, PowerPoint first.
You can do PowerPoint.
Okay. Hi, my name is Sarah Campbell. I'm currently serving on the school board. I live in White River Junction. How do I tuck this so I'm not, is that better? Is that good? Okay. So one of the things that we've been asked throughout this conversation is to give some visuals on where we kind of stand in the schools. I do want to start with reinforcing the idea that we have not neglected our buildings. We have 450,000 square feet of space that has to be taken care of, and we, in any general budget year, can only put aside 500,000 or so, and these things, as they age, just become out of life, like end of life, sorry. So this is the doors at the Quechee school that need to be repaired and replaced. Next. This is our lovely elevator at the middle school, which cannot be repaired. There are no parts remaining. This is not an object that we can continue to maintain and just needs to be replaced. Next. Door frames at the HACTC. Next. The trim at the high school. Next. The air intakes, these are covered in cardboard at this time. Next. These are our steps at the back of the HACTC. Next. Peeling ceilings in the second floor. Next. And the bottom of that same staircase. This work needs to be done imminently. Next. Cracks in the middle school foundation. Next. And in the boiler room. And then next. This is aging HVAC infrastructure, and next, aging boiler room infrastructure. Oh, one more, go. Also in the boiler room. So these aren't things that we've not taken care of. These are things that are in buildings that are 50 plus years old or older, and that just are at end of life and we need to take care of. You can go next. So this is basically all of the things that Jonathan just said, so I'm not gonna repeat it. But another big piece of this is just programming and the standards and codes and how we want to use these buildings, in addition to the projected growth in Hartford over the next 10 years, and the enhanced of our extracurricular activities that we know we want to do. We want to focus in on our performing arts, we want to focus in on athletics and other programmatic opportunities that we just don't have the bandwidth for right now. Next. So the list that you guys have seen going around since December are very specific and targeted renovations that we need to address. As Jonathan said, life safety systems, HVAC systems, and programmatic spaces. Next. I'm going really fast on purpose because he's already said all these words. So yeah, we want to focus on aging infrastructure. We want to address the need for growth and development in our district, but we also really want to think thoughtfully about our facilities planning and come up with a 30-ish year plan that will do a lot of things. It will get us up to date. It will reduce rework, which often when you put in a big facilities project, you have to stop somewhere. There's a scope, and when that scope ends, that's where the project ends, and there may be downhill implications that you have to go back and move that object that you just put in 5 years ago kind of work. So what we're really trying to do is look at a giant comprehensive way to prioritize and order the work so that we are being very thoughtful with your money, with the time of our students and our faculty who have to deal with closures and renovations and all of those things. So the kind of big picture look is that we want to be very, very thoughtful about how we move forward with facilities in the district. Next. Cost. So this will fund that long-term process that we described. It will fund the some really quickly needed life safety and code-related objects that have to happen in the next 2 years, and support our long-term programming goals. And we'll also look at designing our buildings, designing our building use and our catchment, which is how our buses run, which kids go to which schools, in a way that supports that ongoing development in the town. I think that's it for me. Last is financing, yep. So this is our financing sheet. It's available on our website, in this packet, and in a lot of places. And we're happy to answer questions around that as well. But the amount is for $21 million for a 20-year bond. The financing cost is $9,165,975 for a total cost of $30,165,975. And there is no bond payment in this year's budget. I know we haven't presented it yet because it was rescinded, but that those pieces don't affect this year's payment budget. Yes, I think I'm good.
Okay, we'll open up the floor to questions for the school district about this bond proposal. If you have any questions, come on up to the microphone right up in front here. Great, introduce yourself and let us know where you live.
April Osman, White River Junction. So you've done a great job explaining the need and the long-term strategy. I'm curious about the bottom line for taxpayers. Who's paying for this? And what's the bottom line? Is it are property owners paying for everything? And if so, what does that mean? 5% a year increase in property taxes, 10, 20? Could you give us some idea who's paying for this and what the numbers are?
So it becomes part of the school budget in years going forward. So it will be in the same formulas that come up with our school budgets, and every year we carry bond payments as part of that budget. So it will come out of taxpayers, it will come out of all of the funding sources that are available to us as a district. So it's not a straight up every taxpayer owes us $100,000. It will just be part of the leveled budgets over the next 20 years. Does that answer your question? Okay, so school funding is incredibly complicated. There are funds from you guys, from the town that make up, there's funds from the state, and that funding model is actually one of the reasons why we've had to delay the vote this year. The short answer is yes, it comes from taxpayers and from state funds, but I can't specifically divide out year to year what that cost will be. Is that fair? Is that a fair representation? Yeah, okay. Does that help any?
If I'm going to vote for or against a budget, I'm going to want to know how it's going to affect me personally. So I still don't have any clue about that. Are my property taxes going up 20%? Because that'll affect whether or not I approve a budget.
Yes, please. Oh, I can't.
Yeah. You can just, right there, right? Yeah.
Check? Okay, thank you. So the cost of the bond was displayed up there in the columns. It comes to a bit over $1 million a year that's going to go into the budget. That becomes an item in the budget just like any other cost in the budget, whether it's teachers or staff or whatever. So we, for the period of the bond, will be paying through the same taxes and same function that we do for any other activity of the district in exactly the same way. And the amount that it's going to add to the budget was set out in that table. I don't have it memorized, so I can't give you what it's going to be for any given year. But the fact is, it just becomes an operating expense that gets carried when we pay off the bond. So the impact on the budget is, for this year, it doesn't have an impact. Okay, so except, and this is an important exception, if it doesn't pass, it will have a very big impact, because our budget was built around the idea that many of the costs that we've put into the bond would be in the bond as opposed to in this year's budget. They are not costs we can just randomly avoid. So either we pay them and therefore have to increase this year's operating budget, or we expend the money over multiple years, having to pay less in each year and do it that way. It's a little bit like trying to buy a car. Either you pay $30,000 right now, or you pay, $5,000 a year for the next 10 years or whatever. So that's
Great.
the way it works.
Thanks, Peter. Yes, sir. Please approach the microphone.
David Harrington, White River Junction. On page 44 of your report, school population is 1,591. Let's round up 1,600. It's going to drop 30%. There's 198 in 11th grade. It drops to 135. And I can test your future projections until they actually happen. We're 10 years out from 5th grade. 1st grade is less than 100 people. So I contest the statement we're running out of room. We should look at maybe closing one of the schools and consolidating, so when we do repairs with a bond, it's lowered cost on one of the older facilities.
Thank you. Yes, and items in the town report also we can talk about when we get to that part of the meeting as well. So I'd encourage folks to focus on the bond questions right now, and then we'll get to the town reports in a bit. So yes, sir, please approach.
Pardon me, Brandon Smith, Hartford resident. I'm a construction project manager by trade here, and so I know a little bit about what goes into making these estimates. It's quite a lot of work for 450,000 square feet. And I understand that this 30-minute presentation of yours is the result of, so thousands of hours, right? I would like to know from either the facilities director or the board or both, what this proposal is kind of the result of the construction consultants, and you guys either asked questions about it or altered it or gave it to us wholesale without alteration. To the extent you asked questions of the proposal by the consultants, I'd like to know a little bit about what you asked them, and if you removed anything, what that was.
Yeah, great.
So those are all good questions. Appreciate your perspective. So the list that we generated was largely based on two things. One is just time, just touring facilities. This also happened unplanned by the state doing a facilities assessment of every school in the entire state. So we had that data as well, and there was some comparison there. From my desk, my chore for this group was to look at a couple things. One was project adjacencies. Are there enabling projects or ways we can sequence this so it makes sense? so that we're not paving something we're going to rip up for infrastructure at a later phase. And that's when, we've baked in some consulting dollars into this bond to bring in the engineering and the planning resources to help work out that phasing. As far as specific questions related to, pick any item on there, ventilation, say, in one of the schools, we know from the assessments that the ventilation system at several of the schools is not up to par, both because of its age, it's just aged out, and because, frankly, expectations have evolved over time. So we know that to be true. What we're not going to do is just replace in kind without bringing in the right engineering resources to make sure we're doing the right thing, both to meet the need, but also in terms of efficiency, comfort, every piece of it. So your question about what we've asked, a lot of that, frankly, is what we need to ask once we get started with this project. It's the planning phase of bringing in the right folks to help us sort that out. Is that?
I guess I'm not saying you shouldn't have accepted the proposal wholesale, I understand it's important to trust experts on matters you're not an expert on. But just kind of like say you accepted the proposal from your consultants wholesale. Just kind of wondering what you folks remember asking them about that.
So this process up to this point of developing that worksheet of issues to be addressed through a bond, that was done internally and in cooperation with the state's assessment. We've not engaged an external resource to do that analysis at this point.
That's part of the bond. Sorry, so part of that planning part of the bond is really getting into that, the RFP around having someone come in with us and do a master plan, a 30-year master facility plan. I too am a project manager and I fully get where you're coming from, and there are hundreds of thousands of questions that need to be asked. And I think that they're beyond the short-term capacity of Jonathan just doing his regular work to really be able to properly dig into that in like 1 year process. So the goal with this bond and some of the funds that are set aside are specifically to address what your concern is.
Great, thanks, Brandon. Hi.
Hi, I'm
Tell us-
Sherry Green. I live in White River, Quechee. I really have some concerns as a senior citizen living on a very fixed income. You're looking at a 20-year bond. What you displayed in your presentation is some serious neglect to some of these buildings. My question is, how long has this been neglected? And if this is a 20-year bond, and you're saying that some of the schools are like 30 years to 50 years old, what are we going to look at 20 years from now? Is it going to be the same neglect that we're already seeing? I mean, when we vote for the school budget, is there not enough or sufficient to maintain these buildings? I mean, not only that, no one's talked about asbestos. If you got a heating system, which I saw, and my husband, who's no longer alive, who lived in this community, very prevalent with heating and designing systems. You haven't even mentioned if there's any asbestos or if it's even been detected. So this $21 million bond could be even more. And how do you propose to bring that back to us? Has that been checked?
Who'd like to respond?
It's up to you.
Jonathan,
Yeah.
please.
So starting with the most obvious first, as far as hazardous materials, we do have a program in place. We have inspections that have been done. We know what's in the schools, and whatever abatement is required for a specific project is factored into that project cost. As a
Into
component.
this cost here?
Correct. So when we look at, for instance, replacing the chimney at the middle school, right? When we met with the engineers and did the design work to come up with a scope of work for that, we talked about demolition, what areas would be impacted by demolition. And because we have done the asbestos survey and we know what's there, we can estimate the cost of abatement included in that project cost.
Did
we don't-
you outline that in your budget here?
No,
the
it's not
abatement?
broken out. Each component of each project is not broken out individually. The elevator replacement is broken out as an item, but all of the individual components are not broken out individually, but that is included as a component of that project. So that's one piece. As far as the maintenance of facilities going forward, and this is my pitch the board's heard 100 times, I've only been here for 2 years. My observation is we've got 450,000 square feet roughly of facility.
I went to
maintain.
school
Yeah.
in the Hartford district.
Yep, so we've got a lot of facility, and we need annually to think with a clear mind and appropriate detail about what it costs to maintain that. This bond is an investment in facilities that we need a continuous commitment to maintain, so we don't end up back here, as you pointed out, in 20 years.
So how do they propose to do that in the future? Because, I mean, you're asking us to really put up some serious money, and you're asking us to trust that you're going to do your due diligence when we see how poorly the schools have been maintained and with the taxpayers' money.
Ma'am, it's not quite as you're characterizing it. I have a 7-year-old car. I have been doing every single scheduled maintenance on it. And the next scheduled maintenance is going to cost me $3,600. That's the cost at that time for those components when they wear out. The kind of thing is happening in the schools. You do not go and replace the door until the door is at end of life. You don't do things until they are due to be done. And
No,
this is
no,
very much the
no,
same kind of thing.
No,
Yes.
that's,
Ma'am,
no.
we have been paying attention.
You know, I'm a homeowner. If
Mm-hmm.
I see something is deteriorating, I don't wait till it's totally deteriorated to fix it.
Great, thanks, Sherry. Yep. Hi.
My name's Danielle LeMay. I live in White River, and not the only one that's really concerned about the really big number in the room here. But bigger concern is, one, does that cover repiping of every single school, plumbing-wise? The budget here? If not, fixtures like faucets isn't really going to cover the lead pipe issues. Second, I would really like a better understanding as to, did you go through and get multiple offers on what it was going to take to fix half of this stuff? Because if you're not getting multiple, estimates on things, and you're just taking one Joe Schmo off the street when you're getting estimates, how do we know that you actually derived from what could be a better option at a cheaper price? Because we're not seeing these things. So how can we trust that you're actually getting the right, we don't know how you came to this number. And truthfully speaking, no offense, but when you're telling us that you're fixing faucets for lead pipe stuff, no, that's not. Most of us are not stupid, no offense, but you're not doing proper protocols, and we're calling you out on this. Multiple people have. We're writing emails to the school board about this, and we're not getting answers from you guys. So please answer us about this, because, we're asking for the correspondence and the transparency, and none of us are getting it.
Would you like to, yep.
Thanks. Those are all good points. One thing right at the onset, there is an email that I check, the bond questions at hartfordschools.net, that was put up, 6 weeks ago. I've gotten very little correspondence, some really good questions on that. So that's a resource if you have very specific questions. I'm happy to answer them. As far as putting the work out to bid, so again, I'll stick with the chimney replacement just because we were just talking about that. That estimate is based on the engineers who designed the scope of work and kind of industry best practices. Before we execute any of this, it will go through an RFP process and go out for competitive bidding. We're not doing anything without that process ever. We have rules that the state imposes on us. We also just have common sense best practices about how to do this as effectively as possible. So we're not just taking one estimate and running with it. We have to start somewhere. So the number associated with the chimney replacement is based on the engineer's scope of work. The actual number that we spend on that project will be the result of a competitive bidding process with multiple vendors. So that's one. The lead issue is one that I have been very involved in for the last year and a half. The testing is managed by the state of Vermont. There's very specific protocols which we followed. All of that's available on the state's website. I don't have it with me, but it's actually on the school board's website. You can get to it. So we followed all those testing protocols. When those test results come back, the state tells us the correct order of operations to respond to whatever we find. So that's dictated by the state. So the first pass that they say is based on your results. They go with point of use, the most suspect issue. And according to the state, it's usually faucets. So last summer, we replaced a lot of faucets. I don't have the direct number in front of me. And then we retested as is required, and that eliminated a substantial number. The ones that were not eliminated, then you follow the state back and back and back. Just this past week, I had another meeting with the Department of Health and Environmental Services, and we look at the next piece of that. And the next piece of that is...
I don't mean to stop you, but I also have a question. So what happened in the middle school when you were also brought up that in 2006, all of the faucets in the middle school were changed, and that was actually hand-delivered to the middle school and to you? That report, when you said that was not there, was there, and then you guys decided to rechange them. All that money was spent changing faucets again.
So I can't speak to what happened in 2006. I've only been here 2 years. I can tell you that the faucets that the state required us to replace, they paid for. We worked with a program through the Department of Health, and they're going to reimburse us for those. What I can tell you is the state, this process of testing comprehensively in schools is only a few years old.
So this does or does not reflect any replumbing for our schools?
It does not. No.
So, okay.
Thanks, Danielle.
Yep.
Yes. Next question.
Hi. Rich Sinnott from Quechee. Please don't hold that against me. I have a point and then a question. So to answer the question about what this is going to cost, seems like pretty simple math, right? Principal and interest is $1 million a year. If there's 5,000 taxpayers in town, it's going to cost you $200, notwithstanding whatever the state's going to put in, which you guys should probably have a projection for that, whether it's 10%, 20%, right? So it should be easy to get that number, wouldn't it be?
The state doesn't give us anything. It hasn't for a decade.
So assuming the state doesn't give anything, I don't know how many taxpayers there are in the town, but if there's 5,000, right, it's $200 a person a year, just for this portion, right? That should be a pretty simple thing. Okay. So to my next point, I'm just wondering, how does the town establish what there's really two sides of this, right? There's a capital budget for long-term improvements, which most municipalities don't actually set the money aside. They wait until they need this, then they get a bond. Then there's the normal repair and maintenance on the operating budget, which is, I'm sure, what you guys have. And I don't know how you determine that, I know in the industries that I've been in, health, fitness, wellness centers, pools, that type of thing, we know what the operating percentage should be on any given year, and that gets put into the budget. Now, whether it's $1 a square foot or $2, there's got to be some standards and practices for municipal budgets and schools that say, typically, it should be $1 or $2 per square foot, something that's $7. I don't know what it is. But that number is sort of, your normal yearly budget to repair and maintain things. Then there's a capital budget that's separate from that. So I heard a budget of $500,000, I think, for repair and maintenance. How does that compare with, a 450,000 square foot facility as far as standard and practice or averages? And maybe you could respond to that part of it. And the capital budget's another thing. I'm not against spending this money. I understand how this happens. And to people that think that, you have a house and you've got a broken shingle and you fix it, in 15, 20 years, the roof's going to have to be replaced. You don't replace a couple shingles here and there. You need to come up with that money. Whether you put it aside in a separate account or whether you take out a loan, I mean, that's where we're at when it comes to these schools, right? So again, my first question is, are we following a normal standard and practice for our regular operating budgets for repairs and maintenance?
Great. Who wants to speak to that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, this is a line item that gets cut quite often. So you get these big budget numbers and people ask them to get shrunk, and this kind of maintenance number gets cut almost every time. Because it's like, we really need $1.5 million a year to maintain the volume of space that we have, and we end up putting in $500,000. So it's a long-term chronic issue that is also part of the conversations that the board has been having about not only do we really need to do this bond to get to where we really want to be with our spaces, we also need to commit to putting in an appropriate amount of money into our yearly maintenance and capital budgets. So I'm not asking for forgiveness, I'm just saying this is where we are, and we're well aware that it has been underfunded for years.
Yes, sir. Next question.
Lanny Collins, I live outside of Quechee. So I don't know who's controlling the PowerPoint, but can you blow that up a little bit? Who's controlling this?
Scott,
can you pull it up so we can see the under the financing, the slide right there? Can you blow that up a little bit so we can see the dates? Yeah, a little bit more, please. Okay, yeah, all right, now scroll up a little bit, please. Too much. Just want to see the dates on the top of the columns. Yeah, just up a little bit and over to the left a little bit if you can. All right, that's good. So just for point of reference, can you tell me what fiscal year we're talking about here for this budget? That's a question for the school board.
do you say, Sarah, that this,
Can you rephrase, please?
What budget is this cycle for? What school? Is it 24, 25, correct?
Oh, what fiscal year does it start in?
Is that correct?
FY '25, so next.
Okay, so you say it's next year, and you told somebody up here that there was not a payment due, but you're looking up there, it says 6/30/2025, all right? Interest is $705,000 and a, scroll over, yeah. So it looks like a payment's due, because we have that money up there.
The reason there's zero impact on the budget is because the first year, the number that you just quoted, 705,000, is going to be covered with reserve funds that the board has set aside for the roof replacements at Quechee and Dolton School. So that was the first year payment.
But it's all in a budget. It's all money that you go towards, correct? So to say that there's not an impact on taxes is a fallacy.
Not for next year, because it's already in a reserve account. So FY '26, it will hit the budget.
Okay. The other question is, looking on the ESSER funds, which I asked you about before, Tom, there is $1.9 million left for ESSER funding. All right. ESSER funding was designed for COVID relief and to take care of things that dealt with COVID. Why was this money not put towards some of these issues that we have within the schools? You're looking at, Sarah pulled up a picture of an entryway, all right, and rust coming off this entryway, and steps that were falling apart, the pavement. I mean, that's what ESSER funds are for. We got $2 million worth of ESSER funds to put towards things. Why are we not putting towards this?
Yeah, we use the ESSER funds to offset the issues with COVID for the students. So we do still have some left. We're reviewing that very carefully with the budget reductions we have to make. But there is a brand new spreadsheet and a lot of detail on the school board website about all the ESSER funds, what we can use them for and where they are going. So
I think it's a fallacy to say that this is not impacting the budget, because you're taking money, you're robbing from Peter to pay Paul, and now you're going to pay Peter back again. And that's coming out of the budget. So it is impacting the budget, and the budget, the taxes are going to go up for this year to pay back Peter to pay Paul. Thank you.
thank you. Okay, next question.
Good morning. My name is Rocket. I live in White River Junction. I can appreciate how difficult this is to all assemble, and I do hear your position about maintenance being cut. You can see that reflected in the budget, and I guess my question that I don't feel like I've understood, I feel like I've heard some citizens ask it, and I don't feel like I understood the answer. I'm curious as to why the school board is not choosing to do a single bond or contract to put out an RFP to do a line item assessment, so that this bond, because to me, a $30 million bond or $21 million bond with whatever, 30 million total, maybe the school district needs more, or maybe the school district needs less, but I feel like in the absence of having that sort of scope of assessment done, I find I'm like having a difficult time understanding the big bullet number and how that's being broken down. And so I wouldn't say that I'm for or against it at this point without really understanding that in a more in-depth way.
So
Thank you.
often in projects, we will do scoping and estimates based on our history, our general faith, and how we know things work. And then you come up with kind of a mass number based on best estimate, right? No one's been hired, no contracts have been put out. Part of the challenge that we have here is we also need the money to get these RFPs put out and these assessments done to get actual numbers to go to bid and all these things. But we also have a lot of items that have to be done like right now. And if we try to dip in on a small amount of money, like if we went for $5 million, most of that money would be going directly to address right now concerns, life safety concerns, and we still lose that piece that allows us to thoughtfully think about how to move forward with this in the future. And a concern I've had from people who've come to me about it is like, why didn't we do the stairs when we did the parking lot? The stairs were out of scope with the parking lot, and so now we will have to do damage to the parking lot to fix the stairs. So part of this planning goal is to keep that from happening, is to properly sequence and prioritize work so that we're not costing more money in rework, but that we're adequately addressing the immediate life safety needs of our buildings. So I don't know if that helps you, but it's really trying to do two things at once.
Right, so that is helpful, thank you. And I guess what I'm hearing then is that there's immediate pressing issues that have to be resolved. And I did hear some mention of certain operating costs from this upcoming fiscal year would be included within that. And then the second issue of just this larger master plan and major infrastructural overhaul. To me, it feels like it would be really clear if we were being asked as taxpayers to understand the immediate pressing amount, and that was right in front of us and we could support that. And then the other being put out as a scope, because my concern is that with the process of how long it would take to scope and assess that, it might be a year or two yet before the RFPs are in and any of that money is being deployed. So the bond would be issued but not deployed. And a second concern, and then I'll finish here. Second concern is if that scoping comes back and it so happens that the school district needs even more money, then I think that will be a pretty upsetting feeling for taxpayers. And so to me, it feels like two different issues. Of course, I trust that you've done the best work that you can. And so I'm just sort of offering my own clarifications and thoughts. Thank you.
Just to explain, there is a document on the school board website at the top of the page under the school board section of the school's website where it talks explicitly about the bond, and there's a multi-page spreadsheet that has every single project that went into making that number, broken down by school with the description of what it is and so forth, estimated cost. It's all there.
For this bond specifically?
That bond specifically.
I do want to address your other concern because I agree with you.
Okay.
So for me, a lot of it is about the immediate need. Replacing immediate need in kind might not actually be in our best interest. So should we be looking at a heating system that runs on oil? Should we be actually looking at a more environmentally friendly or a more efficient heating system? So one of the problems with spending all of the money to repair in place right now and then looking forward is that we might end up spending $3 million on a system that really isn't efficient, environmentally has a bad environmental impact, isn't good for but we don't know that because we haven't done the work to really look forward as to what the future of our buildings are. So that's kind of my approach to it is replace in kind could actually become more expensive and lead to a lot of rework.
Thank you.
Great, thanks. Yes, sir.
Hi, Simon Dennis, White River Junction. And I wanted to come back to the first question that was asked about the impact on an individual tax bill, because it was also the first question that came to my mind, and it seems to me to be the fundamental question with regards to taxpayers evaluating this bond. I was thinking about how to calculate that with regards to the overall budget and the tax rate and the impact on the tax rate. And but then the broader question came up for me was, do you guys have an estimate for how much this paying off this bond is going to impact taxpayers?
The taxpayer in a given year, because we don't know how the tax situation is going to work out in a given year. The prime example is what happened this year. Okay, the budget that we originally developed had a 5% tax increase in it. The state looked at that budget and the other budgets that it got, or that it was aware that was being developed, and said, gee, we promised to make it possible for there be no more than a 5% tax increase. We can't afford that. We're throwing that promise out with the bathwater. That the tax increase from our budget went up to 37, 38, 39%, depending on when you looked at it and what date it was in the week. So that kind of thing is going to play out every single year going forward unless the funding formulas and process in this state change. Now, we have been fortunate up to now that the state's tax process for schools hasn't had to face a major influx of inflation. It never had to try to swallow inflationary forces in the economy before. That's not the truth anymore. We now are in an inflationary period for the first time in 20 plus years. So how that's going to work out in the future, it depends on what happens to inflation in the economy. It depends on how many people move here. It depends on such a matter of factors that all we can say is there's going to be that amount of money, choose your line, in year X that we're going to be paying off on the bond. And it's going to depend hugely on what happens. And I'm not exaggerating to say that a lot of it is beyond our control. Yeah. We don't control what happens to the common level of appraisal. We don't control what happens to the yield.
Great.
We don't happen to do a lot of those things.
Yeah,
so
follow up?
We can do the best. This is what's going to cost.
Yeah, actually, I came up to the mic aware of the fact that there is some ambiguity with regards to the future projections based on the amount that the state offers. That brings me to my next question. Do you have an estimate for approximately how much it may impact taxpayers? Based on your past experience of what has been the contribution from the state?
So the state stopped contributing towards buildings with the arrival of the current governor. It has not decided to pick up, and I don't expect it ever will pick up, the cost of doing maintenance. This town, to its internal credit, has stepped up and done what the state wouldn't do. But how it's going to play out, if you look at the tax rate information that's in the report here, you'll see that the report indicates that there have been negative, i.e. the tax actually went down in some years, other years it went up. I assure you that it wasn't our genius that resulted in a tax rate going down, and it wasn't our negligence that resulted in the tax rate going up. We came forward with budgets that were needed to support the schools. We were as tight as we possibly could be, because we're taxpayers too, and then it gets run through the process. And I've actually seen years in which we thought there was going to be a significant tax increase, and there turned out to be a tax reduction.
Great. Thanks. Quick follow-up, Simon. I want to keep going too.
I guess I'm concerned that estimate hasn't been provided. It's not hard for me to generate an estimate. I'm not going to do that, but it seems like that's the bare. minimum of information that the taxpayers need to
It's
evaluate
just-
the bond.
It
Great.
literally
Thanks, Simon.
doesn't work that way.
Next
I
question.
wish it did.
Hi, I'm Marcy Bartlett. I live in Wilder. Thank you to the school board for really good information. And I want to add a piece of the puzzle that is more of a global piece, not just the school district. And that is on Monday at Budget and Candidates Night, I asked about water infrastructure upgrades. And I was so pleased to receive a very careful, detailed reply from our town manager about where that project stands. Some years you have to do the roof and replace a car, and nobody likes it. I know that you are acting in good faith and believe that. And sometimes stuff happens. COVID was nobody's best idea, and we got stuck with COVID. I do know that I forwarded John Haverstock's email to me to the listserv for tomorrow's publication so that the rest of the folks who are on the listserv could read it. I know that at some point down the road, we're going to have another potential bond for water infrastructure that will repair things that are 80 years old. And the folks who live in my little village would just like water that works when you want it and doesn't work when you don't want it. And so it's a big picture thing for us as a town where, you know, we've been in the position of having to replace our whole house heating system in the dead of winter. We don't recommend it, but whether you like it or not, if you want to be warm, you suck it up. That said, you measure that against all of the regular folks who are on fixed incomes, who are also at the mercy of the prices at the grocery store, and they're watching their taxes increase. I pray for really good communication and a sense of being collegial about it as a town, because although I am tired of the signs that say we're all in this together, we really are. Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay, just to review in the big picture, we're in the middle of a bond hearing with the school board here. So that's where we are on our agenda. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Moderator. Mike Morris, Hartford. A couple questions I asked last year never got answered as far as where the $4.5 million the school received for COVID relief, where the money went that school did receive for improperly built roofs years ago. I realized that was part of some prior administrations here, but never got any answers and still don't get them. I would like to hear those numbers sometime. It's been a year. The other thing I want to ask is, how much money does the school have in unassigned reserved funds? I've heard that's a pretty high number, and if so, why aren't we dipping into that? And then one question about the bond I can follow up afterwards is, are we borrowing all this money at once and spending it slowly over a time period? So we're paying interest on money to set in our accounts? Or is it going to be spent all at once? Like when you buy a car, you got the car, and you're making payments on the total thing.
So we did transfer reserves into the facilities account this year intentionally to do some of these life safety work that needed to happen right away. I don't have it in front of me, but it was close to $1 million in November, I think. So that reserve money has been applied to this space. And then your second question, no, all the money is not going to be spent in 1 year, but the money is going to be spent in such a way that it's not, we can't commit to say on June 1st, we're going to spend $437,000, and because a lot of this is planning-based work. And I mean, I don't know, Jonathan, if you have any kind of insight onto the leveling, but my guess is that within 18 months, most of this money will be committed.
So, yeah, I can speak to that. So, from my perspective, which is just basically a recovering contractor, the reason for needing it up front is we have to make a commitment to get the work done. So even if it's a multi-year project, for instance, replacing the fire alarm system in this facility that we're in, we can't do it in the summer. It's just too much work. But there's savings to be realized by buying that project out at once, even if we execute over a period of time. The other piece of it is the planning and engineering and consulting costs hit right up front. So we need to be in a position to act on those. Basically, with the volatility of the construction market, where prices are just all over the place, from my desk, I would rather lock in as much as early as possible, even if we can't execute over time, get the planning piece and get things contracted and queued up and ready to go to stabilize that expense. That's the rationale from my perspective.
Well, can the bond be paid off early if interest rates drops? We get to borrow money cheaper? I mean, the interest rates are high now compared to other things. But the other thing is, you did not answer my question on how much money we have in unassigned reserve funds. You just told me how much you used for this
Oh, I'm
year.
sorry. It was $1,434,000, and we allocated about half of that back in November to this construction work.
That's your total unassigned reserve funds for the,
It's on page 48 of our report.
okay, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
So can we buy off early? Can we refinance if interest rates drop?
I would have to leave that to the business manager. I don't actually have the answer to that question, but we'll take it down.
Just a thought.
And in answer to your questions about the ESSER funds, the detail is on the webpage, the website. It's there to be found. And the thing that really has to be understood about that money is it got spent the way the federal government told us to spend it. It was their money. They said spend it in the following ways. We didn't get discretion. We got the money, it helped, but we didn't get discretion.
Great.
But I still see here we still have 1.9 million of that sitting around somewhere?
No, we reallocated a lot of that money.
No,
Okay.
she's talking about
The ESSER money, sorry.
Okay.
Sorry.
Tom, do you want to talk about where the ESSER money is and that's
Yeah,
remaining?
we just put a brand-new spreadsheet up with all of the different ESSERs on the website. So on the school board page, you'll see it right in the middle. That money is allocated towards all the things that we continue to support for the kids, counselors and, health services. And, we did a lot with our schools as far as adequate ventilation for the safe rooms for if someone had COVID. But yeah, all of that money is earmarked for the original expenses that we decided to use COVID money for. We are carefully reviewing what we have left and how we're going to use it to help offset the budget increases. As you know, we got to make $2.5 million worth of reductions in order to meet the board's goal about the budget. So we are looking at that and how we can apply it given the rules that the federal government has stipulated. All the federal grants are very strict about what you spend them on. You can't just do whatever you want.
Okay, we can get back to this
thank you.
too. Yep.
Thanks.
Let's keep the focus here on the bond hearing if we can. Yes, another question, sir.
David Harrington, White River Junction. Okay, on page 45 is your Vermont State Education Tax for Hartford District. Is the bond in fiscal year 25 column? Because you're projecting $5 million increase from fiscal year 24 to 25. Is the bond payment in that number?
This is the rescinded budget.
This is the budget that got pulled. So these numbers don't mean anything. We pulled them after all of this information was developed, sent to the publishers, and everything else in the state came and changed everything on us, as you're aware.
But is the bond in that?
The bond, so the bond does have an effect, though, as was just discussed, it's basically a zero effect because we had we assigned monies to take care of the bond first payment out of reserves we already had. So we didn't have to go to the taxpayers for that. On the other hand, as everybody is aware, money is fungible. You take it out of one pocket and put it in another pocket, spend it on something else. So ultimately, there's a total expense that has to be paid, and the money comes from somewhere.
Okay.
But it didn't have an immediate effect on the budget that we're going to be
Okay.
developing because it's already been put
Thank
aside
you.
from.
So the bond
Thanks,
doesn't
David.
hit till fiscal year '26.
Exactly, sir.
Yes.
Great,
So
thank you.
based on this, a $5 million increase, 24 to 25, is $290 increase in tax per $100,000. That's on your document. So if you add another million in fiscal year '26, you're adding 300 divided by 5.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
It does.
No, because,
It does work that way. I know
no, sir,
finance.
respectfully, the way we fund schools in this state is we all tax ourselves, send the money to the state, and the money comes back. And the amount we pay into that whole process is partially influenced by how much we spend, but is in aggregate influenced by the entire spend of the entire state.
Correct, but there's a potential for $60 per 100,000 increase in fiscal year '26, unless the state reduces it. So if the question is, I estimated $60 per 100,000
Great, thank you,
per
David.
your documents.
Great. I'd entertain any new questions about the bond, if anybody wants to step forward. Okay, seeing nobody and being eager to keep the line moving here. Yes, sir.
My name's Tom McCleary. I live here in White River Junction. I've always been inclined to just go ahead and approve the budget when it's like 2 or 3% a year. But when I'm reading, about this additional cost that we're all going to have to bear, the $20 million, plus I read in the paper that the special education is supposed to go up 30%, and all these other increases, and to expect the taxpayers to swallow a 19%, I see it was 20%, now it's supposedly down to 19%. I'm not exactly sure how that happened, but for us to just swallow a 19% increase in our taxes is just a little bit too much. And I know I'm inclined to vote it down, just to let you know. I don't know how much my vote is, other folks are feeling the same way or not. But anyway, I just want to let you know that's what I'm inclined to do right now. Is say, no, I'm not going to swallow a 19% increase in taxes. And I guess I'm confused too about the 5% cap that the state says that we're supposed to have, but it's going to go up 39%. I don't understand
Yeah, okay.
that whole business. So if you could explain that a little bit too, that would be helpful.
Thanks, Tom. That's great. I'm going to hold that. I'm going to hold these questions because we're talking about the bond issue, and I'm eager to close the hearing on the bond. And your question will become in order here in just a few minutes, Tom, so we'll get right back to it. So I would now ask the school board to close the bond hearing, if you'd be so good as to do so.
Bond hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great. We've closed the bond hearing. We're through one of 4 parts today. Fantastic. Okay, great. Before I call the school district meeting back to order, this is going to be an unusual year, and some of the comments that people have raised have already spoken to this, which is to say, because of changes in the way that education funding is happening at the state level, the school board has opted to rescind the budget that's been proposed so far. So in my discussions with the town clerk, here's what I think is going to happen on Tuesday. You're going to have a school ballot, and if you've had an absentee ballot, you've already had it, so that's all going to proceed just as normal. You're free to vote or not vote on any question, just like any particular year. At the end of the night, the clerk is going to announce and publish the results of the candidates who've been voted on. So that information will become public right away. The answers to the other items on Tuesday's ballot are not going to be tabulated and announced, which is to say, regardless of how we all vote on the budget or the bond, or the school's warning of the charter issue, those issues are not going to be tabulated and announced. And what's going to happen is that the school board is going to come back with a new budget figure and a new warning for a new date for a new vote. So I just wanted to clarify that as we get into the next phase here. So again, on Tuesday, you're going to have a school ballot, and you're free to mark it however you want, just as always. But Wednesday morning, when you wake up, you'll know the results of the candidates, but you won't know the results of the others because they're not going to be tabulated, and instead they're going to be rewarned for a meeting in April. So it's a little bit of a confusing year, but I wanted to sort of kind of outline that here as we get on to the next phase. Okay, with that, I'm going to call to order the 2024 Town of Hartford School District Annual Meeting. So if you're following along in your book, we're on page 3. So today's warning is on page 3. The first item is to receive the reports of the Board of School Directors. I would entertain a motion to receive the reports.
I would like to move that we receive the report of the Board of School Directors.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Peter made the motion and Sarah seconded. Okay, we have a motion and a second to receive the reports of the Board of School Directors. Is there any discussion? And I mentioned this now in Tom, your question about tax increases and the budget in general. So we're not talking about the bond issue now. And again, we're not voting on a number on Tuesday, but if anybody wants to talk about the budget, this is a great moment to do it. Of course, you're not required to. Okay, I see nobody coming forward. Yes.
I'm willing to try to address his question.
Yes, Mr. Merrill.
So, and I apologize if I get a little bit sideways on this. You had talked about not wanting to pay for the increases in the school budget. And I thoroughly understand why that would be something that somebody would think. Without addressing the budget, because it's gone away, I can use examples from it to explain some of the complications that we're facing and some of the reasons that the budget has come out where it is. So first of all, as you know, you've all been paying it at the grocery store or anytime you had a service done for your car or anything else. We've been in a period of significant inflation. Schools are not exempt for that inflation. An example of the kind of inflation we faced was the cost of health insurance for the teachers and the staff of the district. Now, we don't get to set what that is. Several years ago, the state decided in its wisdom that it could do a better job of negotiating health insurance with the Teachers Association and with everybody else than we could. They took that power away from us. We got a 16% health insurance increase as a result of that. We just had to bite it. Couldn't live with it. I mean, we didn't have a choice. We have to live with it. We can't do anything about it. That's what was negotiated on our behalf by the state. So all of these kinds of inflationary pressures go into the budget. We tried to control for that as much as we possibly can. The budget that we had come up with, and now it's not going to be entirely apples to apples, but let me go through it a little bit, had about an 8% per pupil increase in cost. That was it, 8%. But because the way you run our taxes through the state's collection formula, our share, the amount we have to raise for the state funding to come back to us, increased basically 40%. The part we can control, we managed despite everything, and despite a 16% increase in health insurance, despite all the other stuff, the per pupil cost that we had went up by about 8%. That didn't reflect in the tax that was going to have to be paid because it has to go through that formula. And that formula takes into account all sorts of other things that aren't subject to our control. And when you ran it through, it came out at about a 40% increase. So try to get your heads around the fact that a lot of this isn't, and I'm not trying to escape the blame or anything, but it literally is not something we have any control of. So that's sort of where part of that is. Now, with respect to the cap, the state had put in a provision that said that for reasons that had actually relatively little to do with all of this, but they put it into law, that if you kept your annual increase, per pupil increase in spending below 10%, and we did well below that number, then they will make sure that the tax increase in any given area did not go up more than 5%. And it turned out that that was going to cost them something in the order of $159 million. They turned around and said, gulp, we can't pay that either. So at the last moment, they took away all those provisions and said, well, we'll give you some credits towards your taxes, but it's not going to be that big. And it isn't that big. So that's why we're where we are.
Great, thanks, Peter.
Hi there. I'm one of your state senators. My name is Rebecca White, and I represent the Windsor County District. And I just want to thank the school board for your due diligence in both the bond and your budget. And I want to echo what you've heard from them, which is they have been under potentially the most difficult budgeting process I have ever witnessed for a school board to have to manage. Because unfortunately, there are competing factors that were outlined by Mr. Merrill, and that if you would like a written version of, I have a town report on, that have made it nearly impossible for our school boards to be able to accurately understand the implications of their decisions on the tax rate. So I just wanted to echo that and take full ownership on the state level that this is a problem that was created by the formulas that we use at the state level to fund education, and it is not reflective of bad management or poor practices on a local level. So I did just want to echo that, and I want to lift up that I personally will be voting for this budget, and I will be voting for this budget for a myriad of reasons, including being alumni of Hartford High School, but also because every single town in our state is having this difficult conversation. And Hartford, while it may not feel like it, is actually one of the luckiest communities when it comes to the tax rate. We have a town next to us, Norwich, that is having an even more difficult conversation. So I did just want to highlight one piece of legislation that we are taking advantage of, which is H850, which was passed. Representative Coach Christie and Representative Esme Cole can speak more to this as well, but you now have the ability to rewarn your budgets, and I want to compliment you and thank you for taking advantage of this and to apologize that you have had to make that decision, and I hope that every voter comes out in April and supports the school because we are making difficult financial decisions, but it will benefit our students if we choose to fund our schools properly. So thank you, and apologies on behalf of your delegation for the situation that has been created for you to manage. So thank you.
Back up. So that's Becca White, one of our Windsor County senators. In the back here, I see Dick McCormick, raise your hand, another of our Windsor County senators. And we have, and we have both of our town representatives to the legislature here as well. Esme Cole here, and Coach Christie right here. So we're fortunate to have a lot of our local delegation here today, so that's great. So the question on the floor is to receive the reports of the Board of School Directors. Is there any other discussion on this item? Okay, Hearing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of receiving the reports of the Board of School Directors signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, the motion carries. So we have concluded item 1 on our warning here for the annual school district meeting. Which brings us to item number 2, which is to see what compensation the school district will vote to pay the Board of School Directors from school district funds pursuant to 16 VSA 562. Can I get a motion from the school board for that?
I would like to.
You can just say so moved is fine.
So moved.
Great.
Okay.
And is there a second?
Second.
Okay, great. Peter and Sarah again. Okay, so we have on the floor now the question to see what compensation the school district will vote to pay the Board of School Directors from school district funds pursuant to 16 VSA 562. Now, I'm assuming you have a number, so we'll take this as a formal amendment. So go ahead and tell me what you want the amendment to say.
So we would like to move that the school board of directors be paid $100 per meeting for the school year commencing July 1st, 2024, to pay a stipend of $300 to the chair for the school year commencing July 1st, 2024, and to pay a stipend of $150 to the clerk for the school year commencing July 1st, 2024. And I would note this is the same rate that is currently in effect.
Okay, great. So I'm going to take this as a proposed amendment here, which would be to pay the school directors $100 per meeting, an additional stipend of $300 per meeting for the chair.
No, just for the year.
For the year, sorry, an additional stipend of $150 per year for the clerk. Is that correct?
Yes.
And you've noted that this is identical to this year's.
Yes.
Okay, we have an amendment. Is there a second to that?
Second.
Okay. We have an amendment that's been made and seconded to change the wording of our second item here. So the first vote we will have will be on the amendment itself. So the question before us now is whether we amend item number 2, as I just read, to pay the school directors $100 per meeting, to pay the chair an additional stipend of $300 per year, and to pay the clerk an additional stipend of $150 per year. Is there any discussion on this amendment?
Joyce Perkins, Hartford, Vermont. My only question is a clarifying one. Do we know how many meetings that $100 is being paid? Each meeting, do we know how many in a year?
No, ma'am. There are 2 regular school board meetings per month on average. We tend to take off a month or so in the middle of the summer, so we don't get that. But there are also various meetings that members of the board have to go to. So for instance, they will attend sometimes the select board meetings as a liaison, go to the meetings of various town committees and things like that. So those also get paid. And there are various meetings associated with being on various committees of the school board, such as I sit on the policy subcommittee, and we meet depending on how many policies we need to review, a variable amount of times during the course of the year. So we don't have an exact number, no.
Okay, and so does that count, like for the amount of $300 per year? We don't know what that's spent for either, is
So that is what the chair and the clerk of the board get for being the clerk and being the chair.
Okay.
So that's what that is for, ma'am.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Joyce. Questions, comments, discussion on the proposed amendment? Okay, seeing none, I'm going to call the question, which is to amend our item number 2 here to pay our school directors $100 per meeting with an additional stipend of $300 per year for the chair and an additional stipend of $150 per year for the clerk. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say nay. Okay, the ayes have it. The amendment is accepted. So now we are back to the question itself, which is to see what compensation the school district will vote to pay the Board of School Directors from school district funds pursuant to 16 VSA 562. In particular, school directors, $100 per meeting, with an additional stipend of $300 per year for the chair and an additional stipend of $150 per year for the clerk. Questions, discussion on this item? Okay, hearing none, I will call the question, and since I just read it, I won't read it again. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Those opposed, nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and our second item has carried as amended. Okay, items 3 and 4, from the perspectives of Robert's Rules of Order, are essentially identical. So I'm going to handle these two together. So we're going to do any other necessary and proper non-binding business, which can include discussion of items on the Australian ballot other than the candidates. So this is our last moment here as part of our annual school district meeting to discuss items of interest. So if you have one, please come forward to the microphone. And once again, this item will last until somebody calls for an adjournment of the school district meeting. So I'll keep this open until there's a call to adjourn, or if nobody steps forward, I will call for it. So last call here for the school district meeting.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to point out, given that we have taken away almost every single item that's on the Australian ballot, there's relatively little for us to talk about.
David Harrington, White River Junction. With the declining population in students, it's dropping 30% per your report. Are you reducing
I'm afraid
staff, teaching staff?
The report actually doesn't say that, sir.
It said there's, I didn't bring it up, 1,591 students this year. They're going to graduate 86 above average from the high school, 11th, 12th graders. So the average drops to about 125 students a year.
New students come. Like children join kindergarten. So
Yeah, but the rate is down under 100 right now. So unless there's a big surge in this predicted housing, it's not going to jump, it's going to go down. So wouldn't that reduce staff or make you consolidate schools to save us money?
It actually isn't quite the way it looks. It's a bit more complicated, like everything else associated with the schools.
But in your report, it's
No, the problem is that what isn't shown on that number is if you look at the tuition students numbers, that number changes dramatically every year, and it does not also follow that because we had 14 people in the 10th grade, we're only going to have 14 people next year. We actually have a lot of people join us in the middle of the school process because of where their schools break between junior high and high school. So there will be differences there. What will actually work out to, I suspect strongly, is not going to be a decrease.
Tom, would you share our equalized pupil and the fact of the rise as well as construction?
Actually, there's a couple factors that are going to cause an increase. One is if you look at what the state proposed with Act 127, our equalized student count was expected to go up almost 200 students. So we're actually seeing an increase in enrollment based on the way the state counts pupils. We also have 360 housing units coming online in the next several years. 100 of those are in this year. They're under construction and scheduled to open this year. Then we have an additional 260 1 to 2 bedroom and some 3 bedroom apartments coming online in the permitting process right now. So we're doing actually very well with enrollment. It's hard to tell from that sheet because we don't do a projection. That's basically like what there is right now. and it's very hard to follow from year to year based on that particular sheet in the book.
What is it, Act 121 you said?
Act 127.
And are they students from other towns?
No, the way that the state counts
Where do they
students,
appear from?
similar to everything else we talked about today, is not clear. Act 127 tries to equalize the cost for students across the entire state. And different students cost more to educate, so they get more weight, they get counted more. And it varies from pre-K all the way to 12. High school students count more than elementary students. Preschool students count half of what an elementary student counts.
So that's why you're saying it's going to go from 47 some million to 52 million between fiscal year 24 and 25, because the state's giving us a new formula per student we got to meet?
Well, the budget has been rescinded, so it's not 52 million. We don't want to use
So
that
we don't
number.
know what it is yet.
Right,
Well,
we are bringing
we're
that back
reducing
to.
it.
Thank you, David.
We're going to bring that back to you before April 15th. You're going to have a revote or a new vote on the school budget on April 15th.
Great. Yes, let us know who you are.
My name is Marty Irvine. I'm here in Wilder. My son is a junior here in high school. And this is my first town meeting. It just worked out today I could be here. I just want to say thank you, because we've had an amazing experience here at this district. Up there is 4 state championship flags. My son was on the golf team, and it was such an honor to bring home the state championship. Today, the Hartford boys team is playing for states. We have incredible. It's incredible. And we as parents, we just ask that you do your best, because we are doing our best as a citizen of the community that we live in and we are so invested in. But we also, our kids, my son plays tennis, and this past spring, the tennis courts, thank you for just resurfacing them. They were in really, just as you know, a sad state. And I traveled a lot to my son's games in other towns and saw their courts, and right now we have the best courts. So the morale went up in our students, and it's just so encouraging. If we invest in our students, we have such a great community, and thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Anybody else first town meeting this year? Yes. Yeah, all right, fantastic. All right, how about who's been here for 20 or more Hartford town meetings? Okay, good. So the vast majority are between 1 and 20. Any other non-binding business here, necessary and proper non-binding business? Okay, in that case, I would entertain a motion to, yes.
This has probably been one of the most difficult years that I can recall, and that goes back to '73 when I moved into our community for education. We've gone through 5 different funding formulas at the state level. The one that we have right now should have been replaced 10 years ago and hasn't. So what it's done is created this mess that we're in right now that Senator White was talking about. It's our Irene moment in education. It's that storm that happens. I'll tell you, it was difficult for us as a board to decide to have to make those decisions that we had to make around even the rescission. There are school districts right now sitting in rooms just like this that did not rescind their budget. They came to their taxpayers and said, well, we'll just see how it goes. We chose not to do that. By taking the course of action that was allowed to us by the Act, which is 850 that you've been reading about and hearing about, gives us as a community the opportunity to reset that budget. We will give you 120% effort to try to do the best we can to do a rate that, as difficult as it is, the best we can get for the town of Hartford. This isn't, in my state hat or anything else. This is hurricane country. That's what we're talking about. And we all on the board feel that strongly, and I can speak for our administration, our teachers, our staff. They give you everything they can. And that's what makes this place so special. Okay? And it's not going to be easy. We will be coming back to you. We'll be meeting over the next, couple of weeks because we have to finalize this new budgeting process to let you know what the determinants will be. We've already spoken with our finance director here and Tom and the administrators, and they've already started the work on reconstituting, the budget based on all of the factors that we've been reading about. And that's just an update, if that helps.
Thanks, Coach. Yes.
Hi, Sherry Green. Again, I'm in Quechee. And I live in a very small community mobile home park. I don't own the land. All I have is a double wide 1,115 square feet. I pay $1,900 in taxes on a mobile home only. That's a lot of money. I earn $24,000 a year. I can't afford a $200 increase in property taxes. I understand you have a need. My pocketbook has a need to take care of me. It's not that I don't think you are deserving or it should happen, but I can't just take money from me and figure out how I'm going to survive in this town. It's going to end up me having to sell my home. I moved here 3 years ago and sold my home in Charlestown, New Hampshire. My husband had a business here in this town for over 18 years. He got sick, really sick. We sold our home during COVID and we bought a home in this town because we love this town. And I needed to be closer to the hospital for him. In the last 6 months of his life, he had 64 doctor's appointments. We've had the ambulance service come and take care of him. He is since deceased. It'll be 2 years in April. I am a widow now. I don't know how many in this room have gone to the food bank, or how many of you served on the food bank and seen how many in this town are utilizing that service. So if we come off strong, like we're not in support of this, it's because we financially cannot afford it. And come 2025, you're going to do another assessment on property taxes. I'm like, what do I do? I'm going to have to leave this town. Is that what you're looking for? Because you're wanting growth in this community, but yet you're pushing your senior citizens out. You're putting them in a position where they cannot financially afford to live in this town.
Thank you, Sherry. Any other necessary and proper non-binding business to come before the school district meeting this year?
April Osman again, White River Junction. I guess I'm going to take another whack at this. Thank you, Kevin, for your speech. That was really helpful. If I go to my contractor, we need a new roof this year, and he says, well, I can't tell you what it's going to cost until after I've done the work and I hand you the bill, and I don't know how to make a decision about whether I can get a roof this year or not. So I guess my question is still, I understand that the state's making it really complicated for you to say what this might cost us. Before we vote on this revised budget in April or whenever it ends up being, are we going to have any idea what the cost is to us or not? Are we just voting blind?
You will not be voting blind. We will bring forward informational meetings for all of the community, as we progress through the process, because that's what we usually do. It's going to be condensed because we start the budgeting process in the fall, and it takes us from the fall all the way until December, the end of December, to get to those close to final numbers. So now we have to do what we would normally do in 3 or 4 months in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So we will be doing that work and bringing it to, our taxpayers as it's moving. So you will know exactly where you stand.
And what date or event is this that we can find this out, so I can put it on my calendar?
Well, the thing is, we're still scheduling our own,
Okay.
meeting.
We don't know yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Who do we ask and when to find that out if we want to be there?
That will be listed, on our website.
The school board?
Right.
Okay.
The listserv, it'll be in the paper. We'll be notifying the community as each step progresses.
Okay. Thank you.
We actually have to re-warn the budget for the school district. So there will be a whole new warning with the amount of the school budget, the bond, and the charter amendments. It'll be just as clear as today was announced, as Tuesday was announced. So it's still that same process that over and over and over again, we put it in the paper, we put it on the website, we put it on the listserv, we post it in 13 locations. So hard to believe it's hard enough to do once, have to do it twice.
So just to clarify again, there will be an additional school district meeting coming up with the new budget for discussion. So I would encourage people to hold conversation on the budget until those meetings. So, which brings us back to number 4, any other necessary and proper non-binding business?
Danielle LeMay, I live in White River Junction. So it just hit me. We've been noticing, and you guys have been talking about the influx of student bodies coming into Hartford. Did it ever occur that maybe we should be taxing more on the people buying the houses and coming in and while we sell our houses? Maybe that's when the taxing should be happening instead of taxing the people who have been staying here and living here all the way through COVID. Instead of, that's where you should be taxing more. Because the people who have been living here all the way through COVID, instead of people selling their houses and leaving, that seems to be better adequately placed. People who are selling their houses who bought at like $50,000, $60,000 and selling for $500,000 and $600,000. It doesn't seem right that we're the ones that are getting taxed out of our homes. the senior citizens that are getting taxed out of their homes. You know, we're getting the shaft, but you see almost 30 houses since you guys sent out the emails or letters stating, hey, so the state of Vermont's doing this because of education tax, and this is all messed up, so we need to revisit this. 25 houses have just gone up in Hartford alone. Something's going on, and people are getting out while they can.
Thanks, Danielle. Okay. I'll accept that as a comment. And since this is not a taxing authority board here, I will maybe up my game here and encourage somebody to come forward with a motion to adjourn. And please come to the microphone. It needs to be done officially.
Fred Lerner, White River Junction. I move we adjourn.
Okay, Fred, thank you very much. We have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? We have a second here. Fantastic. Okay, this is a non-debatable motion. It's an up or down majority vote. All those in favor of adjourning the school district meeting for 2024 signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. Okay, the ayes have it, and the annual school district meeting for the town of Hartford is adjourned for 2024. What I propose is that we take until noon, so 8 minutes, hop up, stretch your legs, use the facilities, get something to drink, and we will resume here with the town at noon. See you next month. So we're going to get to, let me see here. I think this is, you're in the town report, I believe, right? Oh, on the big ballot, right? Yeah. Yeah, so when we receive the reports of the town officers, come up to the microphone. And I'll recognize you, and you can speak to that allocation because this your allocation is it's in the report.
Going right away?
Yep, get to you right away. No need to delay.
Well, I've been sitting here because you're in school elementary school.
Yeah, right. Good. All right. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you take a minute here to take your seats. Ready to roll? Great. Yeah, we'll get going. No, I saw it. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please find your seats. What's that? Thanks for the break. Yeah, that's good. Okay, welcome back, everybody. We're getting to the town side of town meeting. The town meeting is officially still in recess, and before I call the town meeting back into order, I'm going to have the select board call themselves into order to hold a bond hearing. So this is the second official bond hearing that's going to be on the ballot on Tuesday. So I'll turn it over to Mike, the chairman of the select board.
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Hartford Select Board on Saturday, March 2nd, 2024. And we have a bond presentation from our Fire Chief, Scott Cooney, about a bond for Fire Station 2 in Quechee.
Good afternoon. All set. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Scott Cooney, your Fire Chief, and it's my privilege to present the bond for the renovations of Hartford Station 2. The warrant language you will see on this year's town ballot is shall general obligation bonds or notes of the town of Hartford in an amount not to exceed $1,300,000 and 0 cents be issued under Chapter 53 of Title 24, Vermont Statutes Annotated, payable from net revenues derived from the town's general taxation of real property over a period not to exceed 30 years, and subject to reduction by available grants in aid or other funding sources, be issued to finance the cost of constructing certain improvements to its existing Fire Station Number 2, located on Willard Road in Quechee. This is the current organizational chart of the Hartford Fire Department. We are currently operating 2 staffed fire stations. Station 1 located on VA Cutoff Road, and Station 2 located on 131 Willard Road in Quechee. Station 1 operates with 4 personnel on 24 hours a day, and Station 2 in Quechee operates with 2 personnel 24 hours a day. And those 4 shifts rotate on a 24-hour basis, working in those locations. In the fall of 2020, I believe, the department started to see and try to address the increase in call volumes, calls for service for fire and EMS services in this community. And during that analysis, it was evident that the call volume in Quechee and sections of West Hartford stayed consistent even with the increase, and that's about 25% of emergency calls that occur in this community. The difference or the disparity in the services they were getting from a single fire station was the increased response time. It takes about twice as long for an ambulance or a fire engine coming out of the White River Junction station on the VA Cutoff Road to get to those areas of Quechee and West Hartford. So what we did is propose to the select board a pilot staffing study and the ability to staff a location in Quechee and test the ability to reduce response times and the delivery of EMS services, which had never existed in Quechee before. We were lucky that we had an existing structure in Quechee. This fire station was built in 1982. serviced a call force that previously had existed in Quechee, but really no longer exists anymore, and had only been serving as storage for the fire department. So back in 2021, we were authorized by the board to put 2 employees at that location and put an ambulance in that location to respond to medical emergencies within that area of town. To do this, we began renting a temporary living trailer, so installed living quarters at that location where 2 staff members are there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 to respond to both fire and EMS emergencies. This is the current design of how we deploy emergency responders in this community. You'll see the 2 firefighter figures on your screen. The first one in the white is the White River Junction Station on the VA Cutoff Road, and the second shows where it is located on Willard Road in Quechee. And basically, it responds to first due areas of blue and white is where the Station 1 apparatus is responding to, and then in the pinkish red area is where the Quechee Station is responding to. And there is an overlap in services if, depending on the emergencies, firefighters will move from one side of the community to the other to support those operations. Earlier in the budget process, the board allowed me to go out for an RFP for an estimated cost of creating permanent living quarters and office space at that Quechee location. Estes and Gallup at a Lime was awarded the RFP for construction management, and we utilized them in coming up with the estimated total cost for this project. And we also utilized Studio Nexus here in White River Junction for the design, the renovation of the current building, and then the proposed new wings which would be added to the existing structure. This just goes to show you the sides of the building with a new construction in place. And then the interior design, creating living quarters for the 2 that are currently assigned there, and then allowing for future expansion. We project probably 50 years out of this current configuration, would allow for expansion of 2 additional personnel in the future. And it is designed to hold a fire apparatus and an ambulance at that location. And going to the Vermont Bond Bank to get an estimating of costs for $1.3 million over 20 years at a 4.03 interest rate, comes to a total cost in interest of $567,420 over the term of this loan. In the current fiscal budget for FY25, you can see on that top line there is approximately $43,648 in just an interest payment alone in the current next budget. In the first year of the next budget, the largest payment would be $116,068, and then it reduces annually thereafter. And Mr. Moderator, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thanks, Chief Gooney. Questions for the chief or the select board about this bond?
Good afternoon, Mike Morris, Hartford. Question about the 1.3 million is not how much it's costing for this specific building, but do we need it? I understood when you started the pilot program to monitor, have manpower in Quechee, it was to reduce response time. And I understand mission was accomplished by doing it the way you're currently doing it. What are we going to gain by spending 1.3 million if mission is accomplished? I think, especially with these times, with taxes going to be on such an uprise on a lot of things that we don't have control over. Instead of renting a trailer, we could buy one. We could still man it the way you have. And like I said, mission was accomplished. So I can't support spending 1.3 million out there for something that you're basically saying we don't need it because the mission was accomplished.
This creates more permanence to the project. What we're doing now is we're renting a trailer from a third-party organization at a cost of about $24,000 a year for that. It is supposed to be temporary. My guess, if it was becoming a more permanent solution, we'd have to look at a more permanent purchase for this. This is development of future infrastructure for the town to make some longevity to the process as well. The total cost over time, I believe the impact was less than a penny on the tax rate. I think in the highest year, which is the first year, in FY26, the impact to a $250,000 home was $7 on the taxes.
Questions, comments for the chief or the select board on this bond hearing? Okay, seeing none, I would ask Mike that you adjourn your hearing.
Move that? Okay, so we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Back to you, Chuck.
Okay, great. Thanks very much. Okay, we are on to the fourth of 4 sections of our meeting today. So thanks to everybody for sticking in. So I will call to order the Town of Hartford Town Meeting for 2024. The first item on our agenda today is to receive the reports of the town officers. I would entertain a motion.
Someone like to make a motion?
Okay, yeah, the microphone was off. We have a motion from Kim, that's great. Yeah, and it's a second.
A motion from Kim and a second from Dan.
Second from Dan. Okay, the motion has been made and seconded. So now in order is discussion on item number 1, to receive the reports of the town officers. This is an opportunity to talk about budget stuff if you'd like to, because the budget is in the town reports. It's also a chance to talk about any of our allocations to social service agencies. That's also in the budget. The only thing I would encourage you not to talk about now, first is candidates, as we talked about. And if you want to talk about the charter changes, we could do that under number 4. So I would encourage folks to discuss, bring up items related to the budget in particular. Welcome.
Hi. My name is Sugar Genero. I live in Wilder, and I represent the family place. And we want to thank the board for the town for including us in your referendums. And I'd just like to highlight that we are a private, nonprofit organization. We support about 1,200 children and families annually. And we are one of 15 legislative design parent-child centers in Vermont. And our mission delivers comprehensive programs designed to strengthen positive relationships, teach essential skills, and promote enduring healthy growth for families and young children in the Upper Valley and surrounding communities. Thank you again for your support.
Very good, thank you. Comments, questions, discussion on item 1, receiving the reports of the town officers. Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor of receiving the reports of the town officers signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Okay, the ayes have it and the reports have been received. That concludes item number 1. We're on to item number 2 on our warning, which is to vote to collect town general and highway tax and the town school district's tax on real estate in 2 installments. The first being on or before August 16th, 2024, and the second installment being on or before February 7th, 2025, through the treasurer. Could I get a motion for that?
Someone like to make a motion?
So moved is great. Yeah, thanks, Kim. Okay, great, and we have a second. Okay, so now in order is conversation, questions, discussion on item number 2, which is to vote to collect the town general and highway tax and the town school district's tax on real estate in 2 installments. The first being on or before August 16th, 2024, and the second installment being on or before February 7th, 2025, through the treasurer. Questions, comments, discussion? Okay, seeing none, I will call the question. And since I just read it, you know what it is. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. Okay, that concludes item number 2. We are on to item number 3, which is to vote what compensation the town will pay its town officers from the general fund, effective July 1st, 2024, pursuant to 24 VSA Section 932. The moderator, $100 per meeting. The Board of Civil Authority, $50 per 4-hour shift or any part thereof. The treasurer, $16,000 per annum. The select board, $100 per meeting, with the chair receiving $300 additional per annum and the vice chair receiving $150 additional per annum, with select board members eligible to receive a dependent care reimbursement in the amount of $20 per hour for meeting attendance. Such officials will receive mileage reimbursement in the amount equivalent to the rate authorized by the IRS when a town vehicle is not available to them. Can I have a motion? So moved is great. Thanks, Kim. Second? Okay, great. Thanks, Mary. The motion has been made and seconded, and I won't read it again until we're about to vote on it. Is there any discussion, comments, questions on item number 3?
Joyce Perkins, Hartford. I have, again, a question about, is the $100 and the things for the select board meetings, has that been going on this year as well?
So we get $75 per meeting, I believe. So going to 100, this would represent an increase.
So that would be a change?
Yes, that would
Okay.
be a change. I think that would be a change. The dependent care stipend would be a change, but the annual payment to the chair and vice chair would be that's current practice.
Okay. And the $16,000 for the treasurer, is that a change, or is that what it was last year?
No, I'm not. It's the same.
It's the same. Okay. And you don't know, I'm presuming you don't know how many meetings you have because
So generally, it's, every 2 weeks. There are times during the year, particularly in budget season, where we'll meet weekly or even twice a week if necessary. So, we have a minimum of 26, but, we're probably in the 30s, overall would be my guess, maybe a little more. Mary? No.
Are our mics on?
Okay, when Ally was putting together a proposal for the dependent care, she did a lot of research and did a really great job. And the overall average estimate is that we have 42 meetings per year.
Okay. So that just gives us an idea as to how much that's being paid out, because to me, the small things can add up very quickly. And even though it's not in the millions, these little things, we can look at them, and that gives us a better understanding. The other thing that I have a concern about is all these things are put together in for one vote. So if we have questions about just one thing on here, we don't want to vote for that one, we can't vote for the others. For instance, I have a lot of questions about the dependent care. Not saying that I don't support it, but I don't have enough information to make a vote for that today. And when I don't have enough information, I have to vote no. So that's my only thing about this. I wished it had been different, like it was on a different thing, so I could not tie up the whole thing and vote for the things that I'm familiar with, and I can't do that here. So I don't know if there's anything we can do about that.
Well, there is, Joyce. If you wanted to, you could propose an amendment to this item. For example, you could propose an amendment to remove the language about the dependent care reimbursement, and then as a group, we would vote just on that one.
Okay.
And so yeah.
Could I do, I'd like to do that then.
Okay, great. I will accept an amendment, which will, let me just look at my page here.
I second the amendment.
A second from Mr. Collins.
Are we separating the question or voting to take out?
Hold on for 1 second. I'm just reading to make sure I put this. Okay. The proposed amendment is to remove the language in item 3, starting with the word with select board members eligible to receive a dependent care reimbursement in the amount of $20 per hour for meeting attendance. So we have a motion and a second to
Chuck,
remove.
can I have a clarifying question?
Well, just for 1 second. So we have a motion and a second to remove that sentence. So what we're now talking about is whether or not to remove that sentence, not question 3 itself. We'll come back to that in a second.
Well, I just want to make sure, because it sounded like what Joyce wanted to do was to have it as a separate item to be voted on. So she could vote for the increase or against the increase in compensation, but this would be taken out as a separate item to look at, not removed entirely.
Yes, so as we discussed Robert's rules, this is the agenda and nothing else is the agenda. So we can amend any of the items on here. Yeah. So I think in order to accomplish what Joyce is looking for, we can do it this way. Yeah. But we cannot create a standalone item. Yep. Right. So now the discussion is for whether or not to remove the sentence, essentially whether or not to have the dependent care reimbursement. So I would entertain comments and discussion on that. Joyce, you're welcome to speak to it again, or maybe you feel like you have.
Chuck, we have 2 board members.
Okay, great. Yes, board members. Kim.
I just want to clarify, I think Ally can speak to this better, but I want to clarify, is it possible to separate those 2 in the amendment rather than just remove it? Or if we remove it because it is currently on the agenda, could it be reintroduced?
No, it cannot be reintroduced. You could propose an amendment to the amendment if you wanted to. We can go down one more level, but we can't change the overall structure of the agenda.
Thank you. I would like to propose a friendly amendment to the amendment that we separate that motion to create 2 motions, one relating to select board compensation and one starting with the word with for the dependent care stipend.
From a parliamentary perspective, we can't do it that way. Okay. So the way we have it now is we're looking basically at the dependent care reimbursement. So we're going to vote whether or not to keep that sentence in. So the amendment is to remove the sentence. So a positive vote will be to remove the sentence, which is to say to remove the dependent care. A negative vote on the amendment will leave item 3 as written, and then we will vote on item 3. Yes.
Hi, everyone. So just thank you for that question, Joyce. And so I'm happy to share more information about what this dependent care, select board dependent care reimbursement, the research that went into it and what that might look like, to your point, Joyce, so that you all can have an informed decision about whether to include it in this item or not. So this came from really thinking about how to make the role of select board or other municipal leadership more sustainable. This is a challenge that a lot of folks across our state are experiencing. So I did a lot of research. I reached out to, I want to make sure I have my numbers right, 15 different Vermont municipalities, the leadership of those municipalities, be that select board members, city councilors, board of aldermen members, and those 15 municipalities specifically were, I selected those because they were, Hartford recently did a compensation study, as some folks might know, and so those municipalities that I reached out to were considered comparable to Hartford in some way by population size, tax base, those sorts of things. So that included like Barry, Bennington, Brattleboro, Middlebury, Essex, Springfield, Winooski, and it was actually Brattleboro that when I was asking them, what do you think would help a wider range of people be able to run for elected office and participate? Because we want a board that's representative of our community, making decisions with and for you. Brattleboro actually said, we have a program that reimburses select board members for family care costs that they might incur to attend a meeting. So what that could look like, right, is, and the amount that's currently on this item is $20 an hour. So, you know, let's say somebody is needing to hire a babysitter at $20 an hour to be able to attend a 3-hour select board meeting. Our meetings are often that long, as some folks may know. And so that comes to, you know, $60. Then you're probably tipping that person. You might also be paying for food for the babysitter and your kiddos. So that effectively spends the what is our current $75 per meeting stipend. And then if there are any additional costs, a select board member might be dipping into their own pocket to be able to attend a select board meeting. So it's a challenge. And as folks know, we don't make a lot in this role. I just got my W-2 from the town, and attending most meetings and almost all of my responsibilities as I could, I made $5,600 in the year. $5,600. And so clearly we're not doing it for the money, we're doing it because we really do see this as an honor and a privilege, but it's not accessible for everyone. I don't think anyone, this is me speaking personally, not on behalf of the board or the town, I don't think anyone should have to dip into their own pockets on top of, you know, volunteering to be able to participate. That's not sustainable for a lot of folks. So again, what this would look like if folks decided to approve this is I would imagine that the select board would institute some kind of a policy and administrative process for the reimbursement, you know, to ensure that there's a clear administrative process in place. It's not like anybody can just willy-nilly submit reimbursements for this. It's really, you know, making sure that there's documentation and it's being requested for the right reasons. And the last thing I just want to say is I really want to make it clear that I put this forward thinking about the sustainability for our current board and for future people who might want to serve. I unfortunately heard a rumor going around that I made this proposal because I'm pregnant, and I want to just make it clear that that's completely false, and I would sincerely hope that folks would have the respect to not be speculating about something as sensitive as somebody's pregnancy status. And also, as folks know, in a few days I will be exiting the board, and so even if that were true, I wouldn't be able to take advantage of that. So I really want to make it clear that this is about, hopefully, you know, if folks approve it, vote in your best conscience, that it's about thinking, how can parents participate? How can folks who have elders at home who they might need to hire care for in order to attend select board meetings? So the idea when we're talking about a dependent is anybody that a select board member is a legal guardian for. And I'm happy to answer questions about that, but yeah, I'll leave it there. Thanks for listening.
Great. I will continue getting comments from the board. Yes, Mr. Collins.
Yeah, thank you very much. When this came before the board, I was not in support of it. I'm still not in support of it. The problem that I see are multifaceted. The first problem I see is the checks and balances in regards to this. Right now, as select board members, we receive this, for lack of a better word, pay for being liaisons, and if we attend meetings as a liaison, there are minutes to recognize that we've been at these meetings for checks and balances in order to keep us transparency there. When we put a dependent stipend out there, there's no checks and balances for that to take place unless you give a bill to your caregiver, or the caregiver gives an invoice or something back to you. There's nothing for that. The other addition, so we have no idea how many hours are going to be spent on that. The other problem that I see is in sheer amount of hours it's going to take our financial department to process all this stuff. Our finance department is understaffed as it is right now, and the added workload is going to require us to have another individual on staff at some point in time. And I see it as a quagmire in terms of both the accountability process and the administrative part. The other part of this that I'm not completely sold on is that there used to be a time in Hartford that you took on a role within the select board out of a sense of responsibility to the town and civic responsibility and civic pride. And that's why I'm not real keen on receiving a raise. I mean, you can ask the finance clerk. I'm always the last one to get things in for my payroll because that's not a priority to me. All right, this should be about service to the town. $100 a meeting is pittance for the amount of time that you're required to put in. And if you should have to be paid, I think and have people pay for services, I think it's irresponsible. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to continue with first-time comments from board members, and then I want to get to the public. So board members that haven't spoken, Rocket, you had your hand up.
Thank you. I would encourage everyone to keep this in, the current item. I think Allie did great research. Allie and I have not agreed on everything during our service together, but I do really think that she has done great, phenomenal research on this. One of the issues that I see with the current seated board and the current slate of candidates combined is that we have to my knowledge, there are no parents of school-age children represented on the select board or due to be representing the select board. That means that this item actually, if we were to vote it through, is still theoretical until future years. But I do think that it is a pretty crucial demographic of our community to have represented, or at least to have the opportunity or the accessibility to be represented on the select board. I hear Lanny's point about volunteerism and civic duty. Those resonate deeply with me. I think if that's the question, then we should maybe discuss select board compensation. But insofar as actually providing reimbursement to child care or dependent care, let's say child or elderly, I think that's a huge matter of making service on the select board, the ability to volunteer your time or contribute your time, a possible thing. So I want to just really wholeheartedly support that. I think Allie did a tremendous amount of research on this, and that it is a fundamentally important part of our democracy to make this possible, to serve up here, that people of all walks of life, including parents of young children, can serve on this board. And so for that, I would encourage everyone to support keeping that in. Also just knowing in mind, again, that it will not be a financial reality for this town, to my knowledge, until future election years. Thank you.
Other comments from board members that we haven't heard from yet?
We're just talking about whether or not to remove the dependent care stipend? Is that the particular?
Yes, again, discussion is on the amendment to remove the dependent care stipend.
Okay.
That's what's in order.
I would just say I would support keeping it in. I don't think this is going to be a technical issue, no one's going to lie about taking care of a kid, to get $20. And I can't imagine it's that difficult for the finance department to figure out how long our meetings are and add $20, they already pay us. I think also that, this would, to some extent, encourage people to serve on the select board. Like Rocket said, we don't really have anyone on the board currently who has a dependent. So, I think it would be nice. We don't get paid a lot. It's not a way to make a living, but if someone can get $20 an hour to pay for a babysitter so they have the opportunity to serve our town, I think that would be a positive development.
Great. I want to ask you to go to the back there. We do have people lined up. Can you zip around to the back? We had a good line of people.
She wanted me to go ahead of her.
But yeah, we do have a line, so. Yes,
Hi,
please introduce yourself to us. And
Heidi Due to White River Junction, Vermont.
Step forward, Heidi.
This is a question for the board.
A little more, Heidi.
we can't quite hear you. There you go, great.
I attended the select board meeting where you were discussing the proposal for this stipend increase, And at the meeting, you were discussing not only the select board, but all committees, commissions, and boards also get this. So I would want clarification as to whether members of the commissions, committees, and boards also get this stipend.
Ellen?
Thanks, Heidi, for the question. So there is a line in the line item or multiple line items in the proposed fiscal year 25 budget that does break down what Heidi is speaking to about a proposed program to offer meeting stipends of $50 to members of boards, committees, and commissions to offset costs that they may have to participate and volunteer. That is separate from what we're discussing here. And what we're talking about here is a select board dependent care reimbursement that would just apply to select board members.
Select board meetings.
Select board members to reimburse for select board meetings where they have to incur costs for childcare or elder care or family care. So committees, to be really clear, members of committees, commissions, and boards would not be eligible to receive the dependent care reimbursement. It would just be for select board members.
Do you feel like you got what you needed?
So we're going to be voting on a total separate payment for committees, commissions, and boards?
Not in this
Not
item.
today, not in this. This
No.
is just for the select board.
It sounds like
I need more clarification, please.
This would add a dependent care stipend for the select board members. This does not involve members of commission who are not elected to the select board. That's the immediate item at hand.
So I guess maybe to clarify, Ally, so you mentioned something else that's in the budget.
Can I?
Maybe that's what we're wondering.
Sure. So if folks are interested in hearing more about or learning more about a proposed stipend program for folks on boards, committees, and commissions, let me find where the GL codes are there. Those will be a page in the budget section of your town report on the town side.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman. The discussion right now is on the motion to remove, not about what we have.
Yes.
That's what
Thank
Ally's
you.
talking about is under budget discussions.
Thank you. Noted. We're trying to clarify. Heidi asked a question, and this came up as part of it. So, yeah, please, Ally, just let us know what page number you're on.
Yeah, to finish, that would be GL codes 10-115-101-0115 through 10-115-101-0185. So those are in your proposed fiscal year 25 budget. That would be voted on town meeting day.
Okay, so that is part of the general budget that we'll vote on Tuesday, but that's separate from the item that's on the floor right now, which is simply, should we take out the dependent care of language in this item?
No. At the select board meeting, they specifically said that this would be for the select board, school board, committees, commissions, and boards.
So the funding for a payment for people who are on commissions or committees is part of the budget. So that'll be a question for Tuesday. Right now, the question is just directly to the select board and whether we would receive a dependent care stipend.
So you asked our financial director to allocate $62,500 just for the select board to have yes, don't shake your head, please. I'm actually asking a good question because everybody here and everybody watching later needs to have this information. You are allocating $62,500 for the select board to act as our select board and for them to be liaisons to committees and commissions and boards?
So Heidi, the question that's germane right now is the question of whether to support or not this amendment to remove the dependent care stipend in question 3. So there are other questions related to the budget that you're speaking about that are not germane to this question. So that's part of Tuesday's budget. The question before us is, should we or should we not take out this sentence? So do you want to speak to that?
So I came up before Joyce made her amendment. So this has to do with the budget. This has to do with their stipend.
So what we're voting on right now is actually separate from the budget. We are setting the pay for the select board under this item.
But we have to know how much they're proposing.
Right, I think we heard previously some discussion about what they thought it might cost for the year. But that's separate from this other question of what's happening in the general fund for boards and commissions.
But we all need transparency. I'm gonna
Great,
leave it
thanks
at
Heidi.
that.
Great. Yes, next question or comment.
Hi, my name is Kim Dumont. I live in White River Junction. I'd just like to say I think this part of the amendment should stay in it. I think that it's important that people who have families feel like they can be represented on the board, and I feel like that burden is still mostly falls on women, and I think for women to keep being represented on this board, it's important to have that kind of safety net. I'll also say that I work in the finance office at the Hartford School District, and so I have a hard time believing that the few people who would take advantage of this would cause the need for an additional person to take on that load. And yes, you can get invoices from people, we do it all the time, individuals, if that's what your procedure ends up being. I think it's important to have a procedure to take advantage of this, but I don't think that it's going to be such a burden that it shouldn't be part of the language. Thank you.
Great, thanks Kim.
Katie Mann in White River Junction. I think that Kim said everything that I was going to say, so I will just second pretty much exactly what she said. Thank you.
Great, thanks Katie. Yes, next comment.
Fred Lerner, White River Junction. I look at the select board now, and I see a range of ages that you don't always see in town select boards and other things like that. I'm in favor of keeping this language in there because I think it will increase the pool of people that are able to serve and therefore increase my ability and the ability of everybody else here to select the best possible select board we can have.
Thanks, Fred.
Good morning, or I mean afternoon, Joe Trottier, resident of Hartford for most of my life, except 4 years served in the Air Force. I've served on many committees and positions, Justice of the Peace, and so forth over the years, over 40 years or more, maybe 40, 45 years. I can remember in the early years, we did not receive any compensation for many of the boards and committees we went on. I worked on the Board of Civil Authority, for example. That required me to travel to Enfield, not Civil Authority, I'm sorry, the Upper Valley Lake Sunapee Regional Council. That required me to go over to Enfield once a month or more. Now, I agree with, I've always looked at a privilege and a chance to give back to the community, okay? And to serve is a privilege. And I believe in giving back. I believe in helping other people. I don't mean to brag, but I give away about 10 to 15% of my salary every year to needy projects and so forth. And you know, the idea of serving and getting paid for everything you do, everything focused, it seems, today is on money and how you can get it, you know, nickel and dime there. And, you know, if you're going to serve, I agree with Lanny. You know, it's public service. But however, some of these committees do require moderators and so forth to take charge and be leaders. If you're in a leader position, yeah, I can see, because it's almost have to. You're a needed position. So there should be some compensation for that. But for the individual members, I mean, come on, let's give back to the community. I've given back many, many hours at my own expense to the community. And I think that I believe in giving back.
Thanks, Joe. Yes, come on up.
Sorry, I wasn't trying to cut. I was asked to go ahead. Our mistake. Sherry Green, again, you've heard a lot from me. I don't think I've been this most active in a town meeting as I have today.
And
I'm sorry, could you step up to the microphone for me?
can you hear me now?
A little better, yeah.
Okay. Anyways, I have a couple of questions. Number one, the counting. I'm a number person. And Ally, you talked about what you got from the town. That's an IRS. That's an earning. Okay. Now you're going to put in $20 for childcare. Who's going to pay that? Who's going to get charged that tax form? The person that's serving now has earned an additional $20, but actually didn't earn it, paid it out to childcare. I mean, you're talking logistics here of the IRS and having the correct forms to determine how this income is broken down. And you're going to hire someone that's going to have to turn over their Social Security so that the town can bill them? Is that how that's going to be handled?
Yeah, Ally?
Go ahead, Ally.
Yeah, thanks for that question. So, because we already, as select board members, submit an IRS, a W-2 to the town to be able to, W-9, excuse me, to be able to, go through that process. Since we'd already be in that system, then the same thing would apply. So, I'm trying to remember what the meeting is, but I'm happy to follow up and send it if it's helpful. When we discussed this, and this was coming from Brattleboro's program, and I imagine it would work the same way here, or however administratively Hartford thought best to do it. But that the reimbursement would go to the select board member, and the select board member would have to essentially submit, proof that they hired, childcare or elder care and used it in such a way, and submitted a form with a receipt and all of those things. And so we're not then reimbursing the babysitter or the nurse care provider. That would all be going through reimbursement to the select board member.
But that's going to fall under the IRS guidelines, and sometimes that's not an eligibility.
My understanding is that a babysitter would be a contractor for the select board member, right? So they'd probably file their own 1099. The town is paying or it's their own independent service, right? The town is reimbursing the select board member, not compensating. There's a difference here, and I think that's, but I think that to be totally honest, I think that's a little bit beyond the point of the scope of this question, of this issue, because the dollar amount that is affected by the taxpayer is what really is the debate here. How that gets processed through finance, how that gets validated before reimbursement, those are all procedural questions that will have to be instituted, but only at the point that the town decides to implement the program to begin with.
Again, that goes back to what Lonnie just said. You're going to have some tracking of some way of these expenses. I agree. I think that compensation for elder care, child care, whatever, needs to be separate.
Great, thanks, Sherry.
This seems like a little confusing to me. I get paid $75 a meeting. If I had a dependent, and thank God I don't, and I went to a 1-hour meeting, I would get $75 plus $20 in the stipend. That's $95 in income likely paid to me in my paycheck. So I don't understand, it doesn't seem like this is all that complicated, to be honest. Thank you.
Great. Yes. Go ahead, Joy.
Again, I just want to say I'm more confused now than I started with. Because what I was asking for is I was asking basically, is there a way to remove and separate them and have the discussion about this specific? Having that discussion now, and thank you, Ally, I did review all your things before. I've seen all of your things, and I do not disagree with you. What I'm asking for is I just need more time and be able to look at it more. If I'd have had that information and all of this, and I knew it was going to be on with the other things, I may have looked at it differently. I'm just saying, well, you said this is the only way that we can do this because it's all part of one. That's my only complaint here.
Okay.
And so now I am really confused.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Joyce. I appreciate
Thank you.
that. we've got the warning in front of us, and that's what we have to work with. And we can do our best to try to tailor it to what we're hoping to accomplish. And so in service of that, we do have an amendment on the floor, which is to remove this sentence. And the sentence reads, with select board members eligible to receive a dependent care reimbursement in the amount of $20 per hour for meeting attendance. So that's the question before us at this moment. And we're going to vote shortly on whether or not to take that sentence out. Is there any other comment on that? Is it a new comment?
Yes. It's regarding the vote specifically.
Okay.
Just that I'm supportive of keeping this in.
Okay.
I don't think this will be affected next year anyway. And I think that if there's confusion about it, to strike the sentence this year and to revisit it next year will be of no material difference to the town. So I would say that although I will in support of it, I feel like I understand it deeply. But I would also say that it's not a make or break point at this point. So if anyone does feel confused about it or does wish there were more discussion, I do think this can be just brought up next year with the same material effect.
Chuck, can you just clarify for everyone? So I'm in favor of keeping the dependent care stipend, so I would vote no on this.
Yes, I was going to.
Right? So I just want to make sure people are aware of that if you want to keep it in, you actually have to vote no because it's a motion to remove.
Yeah, I was going to clarify that right before the vote, which I think is where we are. Okay, so I'm about to call the question. So as Mike indicated, if you vote aye, it means you want to remove the sentence and remove the dependent care. If you vote nay, it means you want to leave it in and vote on it as it's written. Okay, so it's a slightly unusual voting here. So I want to make sure everyone's clear on where they are. So I'm going to call the question, and we'll do it by voice at first. So the question is, do you wish to strike the following sentence from item 3? With select board members eligible to receive a dependent care reimbursement in the amount of $20 per hour for meeting attendance. Once again, if you vote aye, it's because you want to remove the sentence. So the question is, all those in favor of removing the sentence signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, I believe the nays have it, but if anybody wants me to do a division, I'd be happy to. Okay, I believe the nays have it. So we are now back. A division? Okay. We have a request for a division, so I'm going to ask you to raise your hand now. We're going to do the same vote. So again, all those in favor of removing the sentence signify by saying aye and by raising your hand. Okay, we've got 2, 3, 5, 7, 8, 10. I'm seeing 10. All those who want to keep the sentence in, this is a nay vote, now raise your hand. Okay, I'm not going to do a full count. It's clearly more than 10. Okay, so the amendment has failed. Item 3 is as printed in your warning, and so I'm about to call the question on item 3 to vote for it as printed. Any last discussion or comment on item 3?
Chuck, we have Dan too.
Question over here. Yeah, okay, sorry. Go ahead, Becky.
Hi, Becky Chalet, Town of Hartford. I just wanted to provide a little history that last year, completely spontaneously, I stood up here and made a motion to give the select board this exact same raise of $25 extra per meeting because I felt like they had been doing an unbelievable amount of work on all of our behalf. It was ultimately voted down because it had not been, Gail did a lovely quick back of the napkin calculation and it freaked everyone out that hadn't been planned for in the budget. And my understanding is that the select board has done things differently this year, if I understand correctly, so that it's actually been accounted for in the budget. This is not extra money beyond what is in the budget on Tuesday. And I also want to say historically also what happened last year, which was so surprising to me, is that the voters who are here voted down that token gesture of appreciation of an additional $25 per meeting and then turned right around and approved the exact same raise from $75 to $100 per meeting for the school board, which boggled my mind. I feel like both boards do incredible work and they should be acknowledged accordingly. So I think it's wonderful to give back to the town and to donate your service when you can. And there are some people who literally need that extra little trace amount of money. $5,000 a year goes a long way to support the amount of hours they're giving to the town. So I'm in favor of this motion.
Thanks, Becky. Yes, Dan.
I just wanted to remind people, if people feel it's their civic duty to serve on the board, anyone has the option of not submitting their hours to be reimbursed. So you could do that per meeting per month or over the course of the entire year. So it's up to you. If you feel you really want to give back to the community, put your money where your mouth is and don't submit your hours or all of them to show that that's how you really feel.
Hi, my name is Ida Griesmer and I live in Wilder. I just want to say, as someone who's considered and has chosen to put myself out there to offer service to the town in this way, if or at least run for the opportunity to do so, you do hear a lot when you make that decision about how hard the job is and how much time it takes and how, are you sure you really want to do this? And I think if given the opportunity to be on the select board and serve in that way, either in the coming year or in a future year, I would see it really as a core part of my job to want to recruit people and encourage people to at least consider that this might be a role that they could have in the town, no matter what their background is, no matter what walk of life they're from, or what other responsibilities they have in their life and in their home. So I think this proposal would be another tool for that aspect of the role of a person in leadership in town to say, like, look, I'm encouraging you to do this. I'm not denying that it's hard and that it's time consuming and that it would take a lot of effort, but there are certain ways that the past boards have sought and town has voted to try to encourage, by financial compensation as like a token of appreciation and a way to make that a little easier for folks that have extra cost burdens. So, thank you.
Great, thanks. Yes.
Janelle Sahetsky, Quechee, and just like real quick calculations, I know that we see that you go to a meeting for maybe 2 or 3 hours every 2 weeks is what people may see. About how many hours every 2 weeks do you actually spend on the emails, the prepping for the meetings, the physical meetings, the liaison meetings, the meeting with people in public? Anybody?
A lot.
Sure, Allie?
As part of my research for this, I started tracking my hours of how many hours I was spending emailing, prepping for agendas, all of what you just said and more. And it would range, in budget season, it's definitely higher. It depends on the time of year, at least from my experience. But I would be ranging from, an average was like 7 hours per week, and then I could get up to like 10 to 15 in budget season. That's just and other board members might have other experience, but that's been my experience.
Anybody else? Similar? Okay.
Other questions, comments, discussion on item 3?
Chuck, can I just?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would support this. I know it's always difficult. It's a difficult position for us to be in, to vote to increase our salary, right? Even though it's not really a lot. No one's really in this to make a living on your select board earnings. But a couple things. I mentioned, I think last year, my wife announced to me one day that I couldn't use any money from my job to buy books anymore, which is crazy. It's not like I'm going to the track and like blowing money, but it's nice to have a little something. And in all seriousness, this can be a thankless job. We put a lot of time in. When we generally hear from the public, it's because they're not happy with us, right? And getting some amount of money, even if it's just, kind of a nominal amount, is at least some sort of tangible thing you can point to that, your work is valued and that it's important. So I think, I certainly would support this.
Other comments, discussion on question 3? Okay, I'm going to call the question. which is to vote what compensation the town will pay its town officers from the general fund, effective July 1, 2024, pursuant to 24 VSA Section 932. Moderator, $100 per meeting. Board of Civil Authority, $50 per 4-hour shift or any part thereof. Treasurer, $16,000 per annum. Select Board, $100 per meeting, with the chair receiving $300 additional per annum and the vice chair receiving $150 additional per annum, with Select Board members eligible to receive a dependent care reimbursement in the amount of $20 per hour for meeting attendance. Such officials will receive mileage reimbursement in the amount equivalent to the rate authorized by the IRS when a town vehicle is not available to them. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. All those opposed, nay. I think the ayes have it. Again, I'll call for, if anyone wants a division, I think that was pretty clear. Okay, item 3 has carried. We are on to item number 4, which is to do any other necessary and proper non-binding business. And I'll start off by recognizing the Select Board Chair.
Oh, yes. According to our rules of procedure, we like to recognize and acknowledge our departing members by giving them the plaque. I am sorry. So we actually have plaques. So Dan is leaving us. He gets a plaque, Dan. And since he served a term as chair, he also gets a gavel. So very nice. Well done. And of course, we are also seeing Ali Tafenjan depart. So she gets the plaque as well. We can hand that down.
Very good. Any other necessary and proper non-binding business to come before the group? Now is the moment. Recognize the town manager.
I was just going to consult with the moderator.
We don't have to, unless people want to.
Okay, maybe to make the offer if there are questions.
Right, very good. Quick consultation with the town manager. This is an opportunity, if people want to talk about the local option tax issues or the charter, this is a time that we could take those up. Again, it's non-binding, so it's just conversational. And this item lasts until somebody makes a motion to adjourn. So it's up to you how much we want to talk and how deep we want to go. But this is an opportunity to talk about those items. So yes, Mr. Merrill.
Peter Merrill, Quechee, Vermont. So one of the items on discussion potentially is charter change. And as you noticed, the school board decided to remove that from the warning that we had made and reissue that. We had to do that because of miscommunication over how the town was going to put it on their budget, and we ended up with divergent versions of the same thing. Without casting aspersions on anybody, because it's probably our fault as much as anybody's, I would ask that we work together more frequently and better, and that communications between the boards becomes a priority. And thank you.
Thanks, Peter. That's a good clarification. So as we talked about earlier, on Tuesday, you're going to have the school ballot, and you can mark it up as you like. The candidate tallies are going to be counted and made official, but the voting on the other questions is not. So regardless of how you vote on the charter question on the school ballot, it's not going to be tallied. Because the charter applies to both the town and the school, both bodies need to approve any changes to go into effect. So however you vote on the town ballot on Tuesday will be counted. So that is an official vote on the town side. And what Mr. Merrill has just said is when the school budget is rewarned, the language will be rewarned identically to what the vote is on the town side. So just to clarify, the town vote on the charter will count on Tuesday, so keep that in mind. Yes.
Marcy Bartlett Wilder. I do want to share a few thoughts and ask a few questions about the local option tax. There are folks who have seen the potential for the local option tax as a way to be able to tax cannabis. And my understanding of how this is taxed at the state level is that the state keeps the money and do whatever they do with it. I spoke on this matter when we voted to either have or not have dispensaries within the town. And there is a very painful personal story that was shared with the select board. And I won't revisit that personally, but I will say that if it were to go through and then have it be seen as a way to make money for the town, are we really going to put this onto the backs of our kids because now this is legal in the town and they can get it? On the one hand, parents who hope that that isn't their kid's story work really hard to prevent that. And we have the Hartford Community Coalition as an organization with the town to really be there for our kids and our families. What I want to know is if we are really honest with ourselves, are we looking for this as a moneymaker because we couldn't get it some other way? And if so, are we, like they say, the rising tide raises all boats? If the lowering tide sinks all ships, there are businesses that don't appreciate that they're going to have to charge this tax. There are those that will benefit. Extra shekels always helps those who want the extra shekels. But just from the perspective of a mother and a grandmother and someone who has seen the unpleasant underside of this whole matter, I think it's disgusting.
Great, thanks, Marcy. Any other necessary and proper non-binding business to come before the assembled today? Okay, Fred, I'm looking at you.
I will answer my town's call. Move we adjourn.
Okay, we have a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second here from Mr. Merrill. This is a non-debatable motion. All those in favor of adjourning town meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. All opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and our town meeting for 2024, the floor meeting is adjourned, and we will all gather again sequentially Tuesday starting at 7 a.m. right here for all-day balloting. Thank you, everybody, for coming.